Greetings all and welcome to another Wu-Sabat Outformation class. Thank you, Ba'h B'ah and appreciate everybody for joining us today. The class that we're dealing with is Freaks and the Perfect Creature, part 3 actually, as opposed to part 2. I think they're showing there. So part 3 is what we're talking about today. So continuation from last month. If you wasn't able to catch that, then we'll give you the details of our YouTube channel a bit later on in the session today. So welcome everybody, and as I say, we're just going to get started now. There's a bit of a problem with Zoom, so I'm not going to play with the polls today. So if you, hopefully you can, I say hopefully, can you hear me okay? Just give some feedback in the chat. Can you hear me okay over the Om chant? If there are any issues, just put that feedback in the chat and we'll respond accordingly. So I'm not going to run the polls because it's sometimes been cutting us off on Zoom, so I'll just leave that for the moment. So any problems, just give us a nod in the chat with any sound or visual issues. Now we're going to start off the class in cultural fashion. So us as Musbatu or Sabaeans, we like to connect with our ancestors and invoke that power to give us a positive experience for myself as a student teacher, to obviously convey the knowledge that's being passed on to us by way of the master teacher to you correctly and our ancestors, as well as you also being in the right mood to receive that information and ask questions, etc., accordingly for all of our growth. So each one teach one. So Partak Yud is just one of our spiritual practices. It's called the affirmation, and I'm going to say that in our Sabaic language, Miss Batia, and then translate that back to you in English for full and proper understanding. So if you join us for the first time and you've never encountered this, then this is what we're introducing you to this culture referred to as Wu-Sabat. Adoy Kale Namazurat Wu Fakur Ame Kasam Un Empa Paut Anuki Jawef Pa Ashuk Empa Paut Wu Kale Ashuk Kawun Jawef Neya Anuki Kasam Un Empa Paut Wu Pa Paut Kawun Kasam Un Em Neya Anuki Wahu Ame Pa Paut Wu Pa Paut Kawun Wahu Ame Neya Nakuk Kadur Najo Ame Kasam Un Empa Paut Wu Habub Ame Mushachas Un Nakuk Kadur Kawan Kale Pafef Nakuk Tayur Jawef Pa Paut Ame Wase Ame Tayarni Kawun Lakei Bakoy Jawef Pa Paut Anuki Abed Bi Nafashni Pa Paut Kawun Anuki Pa Paut Kadur Nakuk Kadur Pa Paut Amul Nakuk Amul. Okay, so let's go back to that in English just to help everybody out. So we said begin prayers and thinking as a part of the all. And then we said, I am in the divine love of the all expanding, and all divine love is in me. I am a part of the all expanding, and the all expanding is a part of me. I am one as the all expanding, and the all expanding is one as me. I can succeed as a part of the all expanding and fail as an individual person. I can be all that I want in the all expanding, as long as my want is to stay in the all expanding. I am never by myself. The all expanding is I am. The all expanding can, I can. The all expanding does, I do. So that was Partak Yud, or the affirmation that we open our classes with, say, for a positive experience. Now, if you're joining us on the Zoom platform for a first time, I'll do a quick introduction of the settings. So if you need to adjust your sound for any reason, then this audio settings button is here on the left-hand side, so you can make your adjustments there accordingly, depending on what device that you're using. And then we've got 3 ways to interact. So we've got chat, raise hand, and then Q&A. So let me explain all of those. If you're putting any messages in the chat, so if you need to give us feedback, sound, visuals, just general feedback, which is not a question, then ignore this on the screen. It should select everyone, the option. That's your distribution option. So select everyone, and then your message will appear in the chat. It could just be saying, hey, greetings, whatever. Put that in the chat. Then that's what you use. Yeah, it's for the feedback in that regard. Now, this is a question and answer session, although it's a topic class, but all of our topic classes are still Q&As in that regard. So there's 2 ways to ask questions. So you can raise your hand if you want to come through to myself as the student teacher hosting class for today, and ask the question direct verbally. So at the appropriate time, you'll be asked to unmute yourself, and this message, depending on your device, will appear on your screen. Simply unmute yourself, and then you'll be able to speak. And then once you've finished, you'll mute yourself back. So once we unmute you, you've got the power to mute and unmute yourself at will. You don't have that at the moment. So we just ask that you stay muted after you've asked your question, just to not disturb the rest of the class. Now, if you've dialed in today, then those options are slightly different. So *6 to mute yourself and unmute yourself when prompted, and then *9 to raise your hand. And then the other way to ask questions is to click that button here on the right of your screen, and then you can put a question in as a Q&A, so a written question, and then you can just ask that question. And then what will happen is I'll ask you any questions, and then Manfu Ba'h B'ah will look for that, and then he'll read that on your behalf. And then, say if you've got a follow-up, then by all means, just feel free to put that in the Q&A. Now, if you're joining us on Facebook, so there's a few people joining us on Facebook Live, we're not always monitoring the Facebook Live chat during class, so we might not pick up your questions during the class while it's live. We'll definitely deal with it afterwards. So if you do want to ask questions in the live environment, either you need to be sending those questions to somebody who's already in the Zoom platform, or the link is in the chat area on Facebook Live for you to join us directly on Zoom. It takes less than 30 seconds to register, and then you'll be in on the platform once you receive the email invitation. Okay, so we haven't got any poll questions today, and this is part 3. Now, so just a sort of quick introduction. So who is the master teacher? Well, Dr. Malachi Z could be New York or Accra. As you see on the screen there, born in Takara, this is placed in West Africa in Ghana, to Mary Abbott Accra York of the Iwe tribe, you understand, of the Akan tribes in West Africa, which there are several, some famous ones, Ashanti, probably one of the most famous ones. You've got Nzima, and different Akan tribes. So the Iwe tribe is one of those in West Africa. It's a coastal town, and I'm sure some of you in the future will visit there one day, making your way home back to the Fafariye Ka'au. But as we do properly, we always start things off in the feminine, because we are a matriarchal tribe, and the system which matches basically the systems that we see in nature. So we start with the female or feminine first, understood, and so we give respect to Mary Abbott Accra York, because obviously the genetic configuration that was arguably created in order to form a Dr. Malachi Z York. When we're talking about physical existence in terms of this incarnation, then you have to have a mother and father, understood. And so, as some of you may know, I'm not dealing with biblical stuff necessarily, but even in their system, there is in their Bible, I should say, there is a system where basically they make a differentiation between beings that incarnate and take on the form of a human body versus individuals who are born through the womb of a woman. So if you look in the Hebrew language, you see the word Yahweh Elohim, which basically translates as Lord of the gods, understood. But then if you reverse it, you get Elohim Yahuwah. And when you chop down the words, the hidden code there, you get Elijah, understood. So an Elijah is a being or extraterrestrial divine entity that's born through the womb of a woman. So the Yahweh Elohim is when they incarnate directly, according to that particular book. And then when they reverse it, it's coming through the womb of the woman. So somebody is born through that process known as an Elijah or Elijah, as they say. Yeah. So born through the womb of a woman. So in our culture, which we'll get into in a bit, put the Bible stuff to one side, but in our culture, obviously it starts female first. And one of the things that we tend not to do is that we're not looking at the parents of the individual who we have our focus on. But in this day and time, all things must be made known and revealed. So this is why we pay that respect and homage to Mary Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn. Without her, certainly you would have no Dr. Malachi Z, Dr.York, and that's 100% actual facts upon facts. So, Fatima Miriam, born March 10th, 1929, and she basically took up the seat of clan mother, and this is what you see her in her attire here. And when she transitioned on to become one of our Salafu, which is a word for ancestors, our physical ancestors, what's our blood-related physical ancestors, then that's now passed on to her daughter, Muqtauret Atum Araye. See through the mitochondrial line there again, we're lining back with natural nature. So Mary Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, the mother of Dr. Malachi Z, York. Now, you have his father there, Al-Hadi Abdul Rahman Al-Mahdi, born 1922. Unfortunately, was assassinated in 1970. Who is his father? Again, when we look at the lineage there, not necessarily, as I say, there's not a mitochondrial lineage there, but just from that line, we see tied back into the royal family of Sudan. So very great lineage there we can see. So this is the father here on this book, Hadayan, the guidance, and seek that out if you want to know more about the history or our story in that regard, and ties back into his grandfather, Master teacher's great-grandfather, Sayyid Muhammad al-Mahdi, Ahmed al-Mahdi of Sudan, as you see in 1845, disappeared 1885, and as I say, a master, I suppose, military general strategist, but more importantly, one who would master, an Ifrit master, in the sense, or I say a Karama, so it's a master spiritualist, incarnated there. It was known as the guide at that time, Mahdi, the guide, and then 100 years after that, in that Islamic cultural teachings, you have the reformer that is born exactly 100 years after his birth. Let's see, 1845, but then master teacher, or 1945, excuse me, June 26. So this is the master teacher in the form of known as Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi at that particular time. And so that obviously is name they're linking to his father's side of the family. And why is it relevant for this particular picture today? Well, in our culture, we pass on information not by digging up bones and analysing bones of our body. I'm not saying that's a science that's established today, saying archaeology, paleontology, so on and so forth. However, we have a different way of doing things rather than to disrespect the graves of our ancestors, etc. So in order for us to rediscover things that were previously buried. Then we do that from the top down, understand? So in the form of outformation, which is dealing with stuff outside of this particular planet. So when we deal with outformation, it's outside the Earth. It's pretty much, they understand most things that take place on the planet Earth, not everything, but we talk about things outside as outformation, and things within the sphere of the planet Earth. We talk about that being information, and things beneath the sea, we talk about that being beneath formation, understood in our doctrine. So our origin comes from the stars, our culture of Wu-Sabat, which is factual information, is basically, that understands the fact that we are animists. So we recognize the fact that we were a soul force first before incarnating into the physical form, so in a state of energy, before coming into matter, linked to the mind and the mental, understood. And so therefore, when we forgot, because the virus called monotheistic religion has interfered with our connection to our ancestors and to our sources of mental and energy in respect of that. So how we are powered and how we, I suppose, loop that back to feed information back into the outformation sphere, into the mental, and also how we feed energy back in as well into that system, which we'll probably talk about a bit more in part 3, when we talk about collagen and its role in the human body. However, the point is to say, not to be long-winded, is to say that the renewal of our story comes from above. So it comes from our ancestors incarnating into human form by way of being born, in this instance by way of a woman. And the reason for doing that is because there is a disconnect oftentimes. If you're where they are at, fourth plane of existence and above, which is the mental plane, got physical for 1, plane of force 2, spiritual 3, they're mental at 4. They don't come below the mental, understood? So as we can see in many instances throughout our story, of creating a vehicle or a vessel. In ancient Egypt, they referred to, not in ancient Egypt, the proper title, I should say, is Amun Ba'h B'ah. The ancient Egyptians, or the Kadem Muhammadu, as we say in Celtic, referred to that individual being as Thahutwi or Tahuti, some may say. And interesting that the name has a tweet on the end of it, dual, but nonetheless, they refer to that being as Tahuti, understood and seen, obviously, at certain times throughout the ages. So a vehicle or a vessel is created to allow our ancestors to speak through that vehicle or vessel, to pass on information to us, to aid our transformation, understood? And so because there's a disconnect, as I say, you can have a disconnect, I've said this before, we can have a disconnect between child and their parents in the same household. You understand? A cultural disconnect. So you can have children today who, we're closer probably than what we were before in terms of adults and their kids listen to similar music, watching similar media and different things of that nature. But there is a disconnect. You understand? You were born at a certain time, and that's you've got a perception of the world and how you were raised culturally and so on and so forth. And then you've got young people who, let's say, they spend more time away from you than they probably do with you, if you're not homeschooling them. And so you get a disconnect. So even in one generation, you can get a disconnect. So imagine now you've got hundreds of thousands of years of difference. Doesn't mean to say I don't know who we are, but to know a people, sometimes you have to raise amongst them. And so hence, they birth an individual to raise amongst us, to know exactly how to deal with our nature, understood? So when you read the introduction of the books, you see that the being there is a combination of different genes from certain star constellations where our genetics come from. And we understand as star people who were ridiculed by being called sunshine, certainly in England and like that other places around the world. But they used to make it a joke to say, "All right, sunshine," when they were speaking to a black person, because we've been kissed by the sun, not knowing actually, yes, thank you. And yeah, thank you, I am sunshine. Uh, Mr. Mukasu, and my blackness will burn your, my emanation will burn inside anything that doesn't respect the sun. Understood? So the reality of the situation is that the configurations, when you read the start of the book, is talking about from Orion, Sirius, and let's say Marcabian influences there, which are greys. We'll get into that a bit later. Which you can see evidence of different configurations of genes in the birthing process. And we go through, obviously, a reptilian phase, isn't it, at the beginning, then into Mardian or Mardu, greys, etc., before we become kind of humanoid towards the latter part of the so-called pregnancy. So there are different ways and different natures that are within us, and some by way of original design, some we were forcibly, in a lot of instances, mixed in. So send a combination of an individual then to be able to deal with that nature. So the aspect of Wu-Sabat that we are learning, make no mistake about it, it was designed, understood, to be delivered a certain way in this day and time. And that's why you have a master teacher. The term a lot of the time is misused by people who do not understand its meaning. And one of the things that we do with these classes is that we make sure, and other student teachers around the world, as part of the Trishu Tashrak, understood, is to make sure basically that we're understanding things how we define them as sapiens, because we have our own definitions of things. So some things sound nice, you understand, and then people take them and run with it and then give the credit back to the person who originally formed it. So when we say master teacher, we are saying a master at teaching. Understood? So Wu-Sabat was designed for the mindset for us in this day and time to be effective of removing something referred to as the spell of Leviathan in the Bible, or this virus, arguably, that is plaguing our minds and stopping us from enabling us to connect properly with our nine ether forces, or proper nine mind, you understand, the original nine mind deity of deities. So our link between where we are at now in terms of a perception of where we are now and our link to the omniverse is uninterrupted. We'll talk a lot about that today to understand what's out there and how it's been affecting us. So we built the pyramids, but we can't remember how we did it. All of that knowledge connecting us to our ancient ancestors seemingly was lost. We were lost people, and a solution was necessary, which we called for. Yes, when we were calling out, we know what we was calling for, but we were calling out to something. We couldn't properly define it. We had names that were given to us, but that prayer was answered, obviously, and as I say, a teacher was created and birthed into the world to address those issues, so we could have a chance to become who and what we're supposed to be. So the who we are, as opposed to the what we became, by way of the choices that we made in this society, often out of ignorance. So in order to address that, originally in 1963, when the first sort of books were written, books like the Nine Ball, etc. If you look at the language of those today now, because so many books have been released, they're actually a lot easier to understand and to read if you understand the kind of style. So we were getting Wu-Sabat in its raw form, certain names, titles, and things, and language that was being used. But actually, those books were a roadmap for how to fix what is being called the black race, you understand, or the African race. Yeah, if you really read, they go into it, and it's a step by step. Do this. You need to know who's the enemy, who's attacking, but basically, economically, spiritually, whatever, esoterically, all of that is in those books, and it was a roadmap for us basically to follow to get us out of the hellish conditions that we found ourselves in. And effectively, that was too heavy for the people at that time. And today now, there's so much media advancement and things that have gone out and things that you visualize and see. that when you're reading the books today, a lot of the stuff in there is not really foreign to you in that way. But if you think about it in the 60s, you try and talk to people about clones, advanced computers, and different things of that nature. You understand? Obviously, there was, you know, technological advancement even at that time, but some of the concepts would have been difficult to understand. And so people wanted religion, and so they got a version of that. So this combination of Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi and the etheric entity at that time was known as El Khadir. Understood? So that combination was necessary and needed for the time from 1970 down to basically 1970, basically down to the release of a book called the Holy Tablets, there or thereabouts, 1996, and that basically addressed all of the monotheistic religious schools, walking you all the way back home to ancient Egypt. So the importance of the Holy Tablets, which at some point will be revised and updated to fit where we're at today, it helped because it was the bridge between religion and reality, a stepping stone stage to address all those kind of stories that we had learnt about in religion and more. So where they came from, and that walks you back into the Sumerian schools where you know about Enki and Lil, all of that stuff, all those stories, and each of the different, I suppose, esoteric aspects of those different religious schools. So Christianity has its own esoteric side, Islam has its own esoteric side, as well as Judaism having its own esoteric side. So walking you all the way back through that and dealing with some of the Masonic school stuff all the way back to ancient Egypt, where all roads lead back to Africa. Yes, and ancient Africa, and those teachings there. So that combination, once they had done their job, they handed over the staff or the baton, so to speak, onto the new combination, which was Dr. Malachi Z, Kabila York, Akran, and being known as Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn. So once those first 30 years really were up, it was in readiness for the year 2000. Obviously, ended the devil's rule, so to speak, as they call it, or the Caucasians' time to rule, and bringing in the new cycle information, or us learning about our stuff, understood, for the next 30 years. So symbolically, they talk about 24 elders around the throne. That's a story linking back, as I say, to the Endora star map and the 24,000 year cycle, Project 24. And then there's 24 elders, and obviously at the end of the cycle, the 19th elder incarnates and takes on the 25th seat, which is here on Earth. So if you imagine 24 seats, and then the 25th seat is in the spoke or in the center here on Earth. So if you imagine looking at an hourglass, understood, yeah, and you turn it on its side, as opposed to looking at it from the top downwards, then you're seeing higher ancestors communicating through a source in the center, and the one that then communicates with the many to help the many to reach the genetic marker set by our ancestors in this day and time, in order for us to elevate as part of our own ascension journey. So the planet's going through a transformation, and obviously we as a people are going through a transformation to become what we are supposed to be. We're only using a small proportion of our capabilities, and so we are being taught as the children of the Natharu how to master those capabilities, not only to remove the adverse forces from this planet, but to continue with our ascension journey as children of the Natharu. So this being was incarnated to fulfill that particular purpose. And I say that story you see featuring heavily in our culture, replicating itself throughout the ages in our culture. Unfortunately for us, born in this day and time, we only got the version what the Caucasians or the Mukasu gave to us through the Bible, through the Quran, through the Torah. Yeah, all these multiple choices were given to us. So we never knew what our ancestors had to say, how they defined the words, what was their word for the universe, what was their word for the multiverse, what was their word for God even. We only got what the Romanized, Greekicized version of all these things. And we didn't understand the natural rules of nature and how things all hang together, and how the different races basically are designed in a way where they communicate on a unique frequency, unique to that race. And so you're tapping into Outformation, which is being broadcast for a particular configuration of people. You understand? And so therefore the rules work in a certain way where if I'm tapping into somebody else's or another race's Outformation, if they've got Outformation from their own ancestors, it doesn't work for me because I'm not them. You understand? So, you're calling them prophets and deities of another person's race. Well, what you're doing, you're helping to empower them. And actually, it doesn't work for you because you don't have their genetic configuration. So we never had our stuff until, as I say, this particular individual came along. And by way of title and action, gave us back our stuff in the form of Wu-Sabat. It's a new spiritual science in this day and time. And just before we get into the class today, one of the things that we do have to remember, we sometimes forget, because so many books have come out since that original Right Knowledge series, but the purpose of Wu-Sabat is to unify the Nagaru, understand the Nagaru, or black people across the planet. It's our spiritual science understood as a unifying force amongst us. It allows us to come together, collaborate, work together as a tribe, obviously as family, obviously as nation, and all these things understood. So it's our science that allows us to connect with each other, as all other races who have or still retain some element of their culture are able to work together, even if they don't like each other. They don't have to necessarily not wearing all the same clothes. You understand? They're not necessarily doing the same things, but they're able to unify under their spiritual science, being called religion. Now, the Sabatic word for that is Zam, and it means opinion. So their viewpoint of the world allows them to unify and connect with their ancestors. Understood? And so us calling upon them, it doesn't work for us. Yeah, it's a science of idleness, so to speak. And so you're calling upon deities not of your own. You're not linked to them etherically or by way of any DNA ancestry, and so those forces can actually work against you. So there's been a plot and a plan to put a barrier between, or to redirect your emotional energy into forces that work against you. Do you understand? So I think you understand it maybe from some understanding from a biblical perspective. Evil fair seeming. So bad was made to look good and good was made to look bad. You see a lot of that in the media, which is done where oftentimes you can be watching a movie and the bad guy in the movie, and when I say, I mean the bad guys in the bad guys black, I mean that the way the movie is configured and structured, the bad guys are really us, which is good to us, understand? But in the film, they're the bad guy, do you understand? The good guys are really negative to us, do you understand? And you see that in a lot of films, like let's say Lord of the Rings, for example, where I think that one of the characters in there, or the main character they're fighting against, is an eye, isn't it? And the eye, which that iconography is only found in ancient Egypt. It represents the sun. Understood? And they talk about 9 ring wraiths and all this different stuff. So these little things, you're watching the movie, and if you don't have, I suppose, the knowledge of what's going on, I'm not saying don't watch movies, but if you don't have knowledge of what's going on, you're being attacked, isn't it, subliminally, by way of the movie. So the bad guys that you're, you know what I mean, inflicting all this wickedness in the movie, understood, that's our people, you understand, on that side, if we were going to root for one side or the other. And so they play a lot of those silly games, which people uncover, and you have to kind of understand that. You understand? So certain books, actual facts like the Celtics, different books, sort of blow the mind open. Where in actuality, once you read them, you're like, I can't even see these Marvel superhero movies in the same way again, because you see it's just pure propaganda to make Castle or Caucasians look great and everybody else is just a side entity to all of that. When they put the blacks together, if there's two black people in the movie, they always make them argue with each other and all kind of foolishness that you see it like that. But about a solid alternative, if you're raised in the West, it's difficult to keep the children away from that kind of influence. Understood? So when we were learning about that through the 9 born different books of that nature, the language that was being used, didn't understand it. 6 ethers in the atmosphere and things of that nature. That's exactly what it is, but we didn't understand some of that terminology. But now, in this day and time, you understand the influence of social media. As we spoke to you in a previous session, we spoke to you about how the closeness of the words influenza and influencer, social media influencer, and the term influenza, how they are very close to each other. The word influenza in etymology means visitation from the stars, and how that virus has infected our mindset, understood, affected the way we see things, and how, as I say, this information, Wu-Sabat, was designed to clean all of that up, so at least you would have the opportunity to become who you are from the first 30 years into the hereafter, where, as I say, devil's rule ended, so hereafter, devil's rule ended, yes, into the thereafter, which is post symbolically 2012, which is the rise of the sacred feminine, or the woman, back to power again, where we come in, as I say, a matriarchal society again. That is known as the thereafter. Okay, so a bit of an introduction from me. So let's get back into where we are today. But before we do that, are there any questions?
Yes, no, Bob. There's no questions at the moment that I can see, but the volume is wavering. Sometimes you sound like you're at a distance, other times close up. I'm not sure if there's anything you can do on your side.
Bear with me 1 second. Is that any better? Manthu, is that any better?
Sorry, I was having a problem clicking off mute. Yes, that's a lot better.
Okay. No problem. Okay, so let's...
and there's no questions. No questions.
No questions, okay. All right, let's get back to where we were then. So we were talking about freaks and the perfect creature, and so it doesn't need to be a mystery. The perfect creature is the original Nagaru that was created, so perfectly formed for the environment that was molded for them, i.e. the planet Earth, which we know was birthed from the sun. And say certain genes were placed in the waters of these planets and allowed to evolve, those DNAs and RNAs allowed to evolve. And we first appeared, in terms of on land, I should say, having been in the waters for many millions of years, then came onto land as the, what would be classified as the Sands people today. So we all descend from those Sands people. So the perfect creature was what nature, or natural nature, and the force of natural nature, with the aid of our ancestors, our higher ancestors known as the Panatharu, enabled, as I say, to grow iron ether beings, is what nature produced, as I say, which came out of South Africa first, and then we, as I say, migrated in different places across Africa, and then different interceptions in our genes led to different, as I say, species of us. 9 in particular. So there are 9 species of the Negroid or Nagaru race, from obviously described as caramel skinned or to blue-black. Understood? So all of that is part of our race, many different shades of melanin, as you may classify it as in that regard. So there's 9 species of us as a people. Understood? And we know that the tightness of the curl denotes the genetic strength. And if you look at the Sands people, as I say, one of the ways in which the extraterrestrials who are responsible, using modern terminology, extraterrestrials who are responsible for the creation of human beings, obviously them taking some of the original design and then using it in some instances to create their own version of them after them in their likeness, to be able to exist in the planet Earth. And what they did is that they placed certain genetic markers on the people. Now, the Sands people have the genetic markers of all of the major races on the planet, or original races on the planet, but they do not have the genetic marker of the Caucasian. So they have the tightness of the curl, true hair, not as opposed to fur, of the Negroid. They have the folded eyelid of the Oriental, which is a characteristic of the Oriental. They have the indented chin of the Dravidian, or some say Hindu, and they have the ridged forehead or brow forehead of the Aborigine. So they have all of the markers of all of the sort of classified as root races, and that shows basically that we were here first. Understood? And then others have one of those characteristics. You could argue, like a farmer, they brand their cattle. Well, in this instance, extraterrestrials are putting markers in to say, hey, that's our children, as they classify it as, or that's what we create to exist here. But they do not have the colorless eye of the Mukasu or the Caucasian. Understood? A man-made, or say a made man, or made mankind. So a grafted individual. So not one of the races, as you would classify it here today. So these characteristics, as I say, when you look at higher technological skill, then that's how they would place the identity. Understood? And there are various rules we're not getting into today around not interfering, say, with the design of those if it's not your children, so to speak. Understood? And so things which work in conjunction with the rules of the environment are considered to be natural, aren't they? Yeah. So like how you go to the supermarket, and depending on the way a certain vegetable or whatever is grown, it can be considered to be organic versus whatever. You understand? So you got organic, and then you got everything else. Do you understand? So an organic is deemed to be, saying quote unquote, the most natural, and then you've got everything else. Understood? So stuff which is grown in accordance can be classified according to whatever definition of organic exists in their country, in the country that you live. That's organic. If it's not, then it can't receive that classification. So therefore, if you think about the way in which things are done here, if they work in conjunction with the natural environment and are also authorized, then that's considered to be natural. You can have things that are in the natural environment that were not authorized and go against that, and then they can be considered to be artificial, do you understand? Or even I have words like unnatural if they're not part of nature's system, do you understand? So you have to think of it in that way. Understood? So something can be unnatural but still be natural insofar as natural decay. Understood? That happens. But you can have things which are artificially designed and are going against the system. Understood? And when we think about the creation of the Mukasu race, understood, that is what we're talking about in that regard. So it's not designed to be derogatory, it's just simply pointing out something factual in terms of how they were created. Because what's happened is that the world has had its brains washed from the real truth about religion and its true origin and purpose, and some of the practices that it was designed to facilitate, and this is what we're getting into over these freak and perfect creature classes. Yeah, so as it says even in the introductory verses to that particular scroll, saying that a lot of the information has been washed away from the last 6,000 years. People don't know the real truth and origin behind a lot of these practices, the books that we're reading, etc., and what its true origin, as I say, and purpose was. So these are the issues that we're facing or we're uncovering now to make plain to all. So when people make choices, they're making a fair choice in the knowledge of what is out there. Do you understand? It's not a tricked choice. And this is why it's important, or it's the Natharu say the best thing one can do is to remind others of these facts. And obviously remind others of these actual facts, these parteracts and these master secrets, so that the world knows certainly who are Nagaru, and anybody else who respects our culture and is willing to listen and learn can have a fair choice, understood, when they're making certain decisions. It's not something that they're being manipulated for somebody else's purpose, which is the idea of wrong racism. Wrong racism is a suppression of another race to further your own race. But that wrong racism doesn't just extend to race, it extends outside of the planet to the kind of God concept and what sits behind that in terms of groups of extraterrestrials who perceive human beings as certain groups of human beings as a means to service at their ends. Understood? Yeah. So what many don't realize in all of that is when somebody says they mean well, understood? Yeah. So Magasu says, yeah, I mean well. You understand? Does it mean I mean well, or does it mean they're good at being mean? Listen again. Understand? I mean well. Yeah, that means I'm good at being mean, if you really listen to what it's saying. Yeah, so let's move across this then and get to where we need to be for today's class. Is there anything that's not making sense, please ask questions. Yeah, do not sit there in ignorance.
Nabab, can I just come in? We have one question from Divine Feminine. She has her hand up.
Okay, go ahead.
Divine Feminine, I'm going to allow you to talk. You can unmute.
I don't have a question. I think it was raised accidentally.
Okay, we'll put your hands down. Okay, thank you.
Well, greetings anyway, and welcome.
Greetings, Rahubat.
Rahubat. How you doing? Okay, all right, well, let's continue then. So if there are any questions, please feel free to jump in. So I think the last point we were going through this lesson about reptilians. So today what we want to try and do or get through is we want to understand a bit about some context. So we are, obviously as ontologists, we're always interested in the root or the origin of subject or things for our understanding. So we want to jump into this issue about the context of certain things that are taking place, then do a little bit of a study on the mind's eye, the ghost partarak, and then that brings us sort of back around to let's say where we are in understanding this freaks and perfect creatures element. So for those who haven't been with us before, what we're really trying to seek out, or what the Master Teacher is expressing in this particular scroll, is the fact that, you know, in the books like the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah, first 5 books of the Bible, you're seeing there that certain, if this is the word of God, as they say, yes, and every word in it is divine and it's all solid, yes, so Bible, Quran, it's all solid. But you walk up to a Christian, for example, and you say, do you believe in unicorns? They're going to turn around to you and say, no, unicorns are not real. Understood? But then when we look in the Bible, we see unicorns. And there are a number of creatures in there that if you were to ask an individual, hey, do you believe in this particular creature? They will say no. But then when we say this study of the Bible, the Quran and these various different books, there are a plethora of different creatures in there. Which the question is, well, okay, is it real? Is it not real? And if it's not real, is the book then true? Because why would God use a mythological creature for descriptions about, I don't know, behaviors of human beings or things that are to come, or behaviors, or describing a battle or things of that nature? They're using mythological creatures when there are millions of real creatures that allegedly you created, to make those descriptions on. So this is another way to look at certain things where we're thinking about this information that we're being given. It's not real. It's not real, and not to offend anybody's sensibilities who is of those belief systems. You understand? It's not about disrespecting. It's just about almost forcing our eyes open, to physical, and our mind's eye to look at what is really going on. Understood? And, to somebody encountering it for the first time, it's going to be shocking. And even to us who know about it, it's still shocking, to understand how the system is rigged. It's been rigged against us. It's been well designed for thousands of years for a very specific purpose, which we're going to learn about in this particular lesson about reptilians. Okay, so let's go back over where we were before. So 1, likum ay marura kharudu okradu nawapu. 2, the muhmam, humanoid beings of Aldebaran, pale skin, blonde, fur, blue or grey eyes, made a home base in Sahatat, Orion, and came back and forth to the planet Earth. So Orion is a massive star constellation. When we're looking at it, a few classes back, maybe in Lost Records of Time, we showed you about conjunctions. Understood? So even when you're looking at certain star constellations, so we look up at the so-called night sky, and you see a 7-star configuration of the Orion star constellation. Yes, that is an image to us looking here from the planet Earth, how it appears, but in your mind, understand, when you get closer to it, it's not going to look like that. Understood? So it's hundreds of thousands, understood, different planets, stars, etc., and many, 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 many different beings can live there. Understood? So don't associate because our genes are from Orion that means Orion is good. It's a place in the same with many different places where different beings live within it. You understand? In the vastness of space. Now, so these individuals, these Aldebaran came from this star constellation to the planet Earth. 3, to the Nordic type, who are made by the Kamau Pleiadians, who also had a base in Aldebaran. 4, tall Muhmam, humanoid beings from Kamahat Pleiades, 7 stars, sun system with transparent fur, transparent skin, pale white and transparent pale white eyes, and are flesh eaters. Okay, so we're establishing what they look like, where they came from, understood, and who they connected with on the planet Earth initially. So their being that they created in their image and after their likeness were the Nordic types, understood? Yeah, blonde hair, blue-eyed, as we see those to be what they call those original Vikings, which the V and the 1 is 6, or 6 kings or kinsmen of the Celtics. Now, so 5 says these beings worked under Par-Zahafu, the reptiles, or Par-Muzafu, the reptilians, originally from Dracos star sun system. So it doesn't mean that all of them are there now. Understood? 6, all these and other beings came to Kawaktaha, planet Earth, over many thousands of years. 7, some lived on land, others lived inside cavern, and some beneath the water, while some stayed in crafts above. 8. In caverns and many tunnels that were made and are being found today. Yeah, so you can look up, for example, Derinkuyu in Turkey, for example. This is an example of sort of underground caverns, very sophisticated places where individuals were able to live for, many years, etc. And as it said, they find these places around the world today. I think there is on Discovery Channel, the name, it leaves me for a second, but there's a set of documentaries, I think, that deal with underground cities around the world. So you probably do a YouTube search or something like that. You can look more into these. So Derinkuyu is one of those places in Turkey, but there are many of these different types of cities that they're finding all over the planet today. 9. And you had the Anuna, who came seeking gold. 10. All under the rules of respect by the Panatharu, divine ones, who ruled Orion and Sirius by way of other star system, also called Morozaku, Razaku, Riskians of Ilion, of the 19th parallel universe to this one. So when we talk about the Morozaku, it's who the ancient Egyptians referred to, or the Kadem Mokmatu referred to as Natharu. So when they say Panatharu, the ancient Egyptians, the name of them, obviously in our language, or the proper name, you might say, is Morozaku or Riskians. This is why when we spoke about here, 19th parallel universe to this one, where the bridge between the 18th, remember, and the 19th galaxies is the Sirius star constellation. Yeah, so Sirius, when you look at that original, most of you may be old enough maybe on this call to remember the Riskian star map. Yeah, you find in the book from Planet Risk and other scrolls. But you see there that the bridge between Sirius and 18th and 19th galaxies is Sirius. And this is why we were explaining to you why it's interesting when you look at a lot of the symbolism around that, because Sirius is connected to Arashtat. And in the book, or Isis, who they falsely call Isis, in the book Ancient Egypt and the Pharaohs, you can read about Arashtat or Isis, and it tells you there's a lot of mysteries still to be uncovered or explained around the Sirius star constellation. Understood? And the woman, as I say, as obviously as the woman, as the holder of triple darkness, you understand the 3 phases of growth within the womb. She is the woman of mystery. Understood? That is her natural and internal nature. You're not supposed to know everything about a woman. All this kind of things that we see on the internet with people sort of running up their mouth and giving all away their little sort of secrets on the television, because it kind of tricks you into giving up all your sort of information. But that's not the nature of a woman. It's supposed to be a mystery to her. She represents the darkness overstood and the blackness of space, which most of existence is made up of. So you're not supposed to know everything. Not everything is for the visible eye. Most of the existence, remember, 90% of existence is darkness, the blackness of space. The 10% is the visible universe, all things that we can see, all the universe, multiverses, dual verses, triverses, all the planets, suns, etc., comets, all the things that we see within, it only makes up 10%. The 90% then breaks down to 24% dark matter and 76% dark energy. So existence is made up of things that we not necessarily see with our physical eyes. Now, that's not spookism, because obviously you as Sabians and those who are interested in learning about our culture, we're not being made to be ignorant of the darkness. We're walking back into the darkness to find out who we really are. You understand the cause and effect. And one of the things I say is that the woman, interestingly enough, is the bridge between the world we came from, yes, and this physical world that we're in. If you think about it, the world we came from, so we were a thing that came, 2 things that came together as one thing. And then the woman took, the appointed time, 9 or so months, to build a skin suit around us made from recycled dead skin cells. Most of the dust in the atmosphere, which the woman uses, inhales through the original pyramid, her nose. She builds the flesh around it with recycled dead skin cells. You understand? And we come into this world upside down, head first. So is it because where we came from, that was the right way up? Now, when we come into this world, understood, we have to learn to walk upright again. Yeah, so it's an interesting one that's Sirius or Cyrus or the seriousness of that constellation. Is that it represents the woman, as that bridge between the world we came from and the world we have arrived or are birthed into. So, 19th parallel universe is where these Murzaku, who the ancient Egyptians referred to as Natharu, who our perception of them is sons. Yeah, so when we're looking at the Ba'h Natharu and say, hey, that's our ancient ancestors. In our mind, we're looking at a son. That is Natharu is a son, which obviously there are many of them. Now, 11, the most disobedient and rebellious was just one group of reptilians. There are many species of reptilians. 12, but 3 main ones came to the planet Earth seeking food of a certain nature. 13, now, Nuwapu or Spatu. You are what you eat. Their nature called for Dawe, evil spirited creatures, to eat you will be the same as seeking wild beast food, such as canines, wolves, felines, lions, grizzly bears. Those who were carnivorous, for the nature in them the wild. 14. They needed the flesh and blood, and best when the adrenaline is at its highest from fear, terror, and fright to them. That is when it tastes best. 15. So over time, the Muzafu, the evil reptilians, evolved on this planet, as well as the near Draconis, the brightest star in the aptly named serpentine-shaped star constellation of Draco, a Roman word for dragon. 16. Draco is circumpolar. It never sets for those who look or observes in the northern hemisphere sky. 17. It is one of the 48 constellations listed in by the 2nd century astronomer, the Greek Egyptian Ptolemy. 18. And today is one of the now recorded 88 modern constellations. 19. Yes, Nwapu and Nwapians, the 88 is related to the 88 keys on the complete keys on a piano for the tones. 20. So in time, these 2 reptilians from these 2 vastly distant planets, Earth, Serpentine. 21. One helped the other star system, while the other went to Andromeda with insect-looking beings to breed greys. 22. To use to invade other planets for food of a nature, they also ate some of the greys species. 23. So you had agreeables and disagreeables. Muzafu, evil reptilians, and Mugdanu, good reptilians. 24. Both would come to this planet for their own reasons and purposes. So this is why oftentimes you get a lot of confusion, because, as I say, some creatures, obviously people think Muzafu, okay, they're evil. And obviously here we've got Ganu, and some beings can have the same titles or they etc. and you can get confused. So we have to understand not only what a being is, but what is their nature and whether they are for and against us. This is part of that lost knowledge that we knew, which was some of the characteristics of the spell, isn't it? Is not knowing what evil is, or in its many different forms it comes in. And part of that is, once you understand the nature, is asking, is it for or against me, or us as a people? 24. Both would come to this planet for their own reasons and purposes. 25. Anunnaki was mixed with humanoids and reptilians. 26. Some were under the Riskians, others joined and ruled the Kama'u Maltu Pleiadians, who became two species as well. 27. As the Anunnaki became two species as well, Dingir and Igigi. 28. Later in the Bible, these became angelic species, seraphim and cherubim. 29. In all, they became deities, gods, gods, lords, angels, devils, in Hebrew, Arabic, Greek, Latin, and subdialects, but the same beings. 30. The Bible and the Quran are of the same extraterrestrials. 31. Many titles, names, attribute, but they had offsprings, male and female. So this already, and it probably has taken the master teacher from 1960, certainly down to the 2000s and beyond, to uncover this fact. So remember, when we were going through all these different schools, we had to be ready enough to question who was sitting in these various seats, where these titles of God, Lord, the Most High, you understand? Who was sitting in these seats? And the fact of the matter is, remember, you're getting it through the mind of the authors who wrote the book. Yeah, let's get it absolutely 100% right. You understand? So unless the person who authored it and who's writing it down, it's their mental thoughts that we're seeing in these particular verses, etc., etc. If you don't know who it is, then you don't understand their influences and how they're defining certain words. And if we're dealing with, let's just take in Bible translations, for example, then the reality is you're limited to that person's knowledge and understanding, because them times they didn't know about no UFOs, how to describe it properly, or certain types of technology, cloning. They didn't know about all that. So therefore, their descriptions are the 500-year-old or 600-year-old descriptions from their mindset. And this is what, unfortunately, we have based our souls upon. And even with the extra, arguably, we're supposed to be more intelligent now because we know more things and we've got access to more information sources, so on and so forth. Have people gone back and done the proper interrogation and breakdown as to what's being spoken about? And one of the things, even as we're coming out of certain poverty situations, even for a lot of our people, not holistically, but we are coming into great substance in a lot of ways. Are we becoming more intelligent? Or are people getting more stupid? I say stupid for a reason. Do you understand? Getting more stupid or dumb. So we're not using that intelligence. Some of our billionaires are still promoting the same nonsense that's in these books. A fake form of spirituality, that they're using their wealth so they don't have to worry about where the next meal's coming from or where they're going to live and so on and so forth. So they've got all this wealth and riches and still promoting, not use that intelligence to take time out to really analyze what's going on. And obviously, as ancient Egyptians will be aware that, when we were in the height of our, I suppose, productive society or whatever, we only worked 20 hours a week. Our working week to maintain our societies was 20 hours. The rest of the time we used for pleasure and spiritual development. And so he wasn't under stress from the working week. And as you can see in the words, isn't it? There's all the technology in the words. We talk about week because they keep you in the office. In some jobs or whatever, they keep you in the office 9 to 5 where you're away from the sun. So the work makes you weak. Yeah, the work makes you weak. So you understand? And they let you out on the weekend. Yeah, so when the work has stopped, the behaviors that keep you weak ends, and then you're back out in the sun again. From Saturn Day, which is dealing with Saturn, to Sunday. So you're going to get re-strengthened again. Yeah, so on Saturn Day, you're out there buying up this, buying up that, and then you're resting back in the sun on Sunday, to start the moon weakness again on Monday, yeah, where they're draining off our forces again. Yeah, so this is why the word when we're learning had to be changed, isn't it? From lesson to study. Yeah, from lesson to, because lessons lessen your abilities. Yeah, so it had to be changed to study. And see the word games being uncovered by the master teacher. So even now, it's hard not to say weak. Yeah, unless you're speaking a different language. It's hard not to say weak. Isn't it? Yeah, when we should be saying strong if we're doing things that makes us strong. But the working weak makes us, as you see what it is. Yeah. So, and as I say, you know, it's pointing us to the fact of what is really going on, what was the nature behind these stories, and what was taking place. So you're getting the real deal. Yeah. So here you see in Hebrew, El Shaddai, the Mighty One, and Arabic Quran, the Mighty One. So in both the books, obviously we know that Arabic is a dialect birthed from Hebrew. It wasn't before it. Exact same beings that are being mentioned. 32. Most religious persons today have a trance cast over them to make them forget the past. It's called amnesia. To be forgetful, forgot. They don't remember that they worship beings from the star system above, with it right in the Bible. Job 9:9, Job 38:31, Amos 5:8, and the Quran 53:49. So you can look those up in your own time. So what they're basically saying is they're giving certain star constellations, Pleiades, Orion, understood? Yes, Sirius are being given in these books. Now, we understand that in the Milky Way galaxy alone, there are 100 million stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Yeah, 100 million. So the question is, why are you being given, you know, these 3 or 4 star constellations? Because it's showing you that's where the beings who wrote the book came from, or the influence of the book came from. It says, yet they don't see it, or the many times it says they came down to earth and raised up to heaven. From where to where? They can't seem to see while under the spell of faith. Yeah, because this is true, isn't it? Yes, you're saying God is omnipresent. Omnipresent meaning existing in all places at all times, understood? But then Genesis chapter 11, you're saying that the Lord came down. There's no movement if you're omnipresent. How can there be movement? If you're existing in all places at the same time, existing everywhere, you're omnipresent, you can't have motion or movement. Because how does it work? You can't go from point A to B because you're already there. So what he's saying to us, and so see what it kind of you're being, you understand? You're being like petty, pedantic, or whatever in picking apart these small details. But for us who's under the spell, seeking to come out of it, this is what these unpicking these details is important in all things, not just for this Bible or whatever, Quran, but in all things. That was our mindset, and not to accept belief is ignorance to us. Yeah, it's acceptance of things that you don't know. And we didn't have a word for faith in the way that they're saying it. No word for faith. Yeah, we put our faith in things that we know, not in things that we don't know or can't see. Yeah, so when we're dealing with a mindset or a culture, Wu-Sabat, that deals with factual information, you can see the challenging journey that we have to go on, because we have put our trust, you're going to find out the importance about that word as we step through these classes, and acceptance. Yeah, that we have made a contract almost of trust with the Mukasu and didn't even realize we were doing it. We just locked our mind into this spell. Yeah, for a contract to work, isn't it? I'm not a legal person, but if a contract to work, you have to have an offer, correct? and an acceptance. It doesn't always have to be written down. And that creates a contract. So you tell me, what has the Mukasu or the Caucasian done to earn such amount of trust from us? What has the Caucasian done, or these monotheistic religions done, that we have accepted what they have put out without it going through a rigorous process of investigation, checking, scrutiny, before we accept it? But let a black man or woman with their freckles too close come and try and explain to you how certain things really go. All of a sudden now, the scrutiny game's on. The investigation game's on. The interrogation game's on before we accept. Even though they look like us, even though they might have our best interest at heart, we're going to put them through the ringer before we accept and let them make a mistake along the way. The trust gets broken immediately. But have we put other races, in particular the Mukasu, through the same test? And if not, why not? These are the questions for all of us to look at, investigate. The trust that we have placed in the Mukasu and his system, even though we say we're not. I mean, everybody's telling you, hey, go back to Africa. We need to go back to Africa. Most of us having the conversation, go back to Africa, are not in Africa. The trust that we place in their systems, you understand, knowing not only the nature, but what we see every day in our behavior, particularly for us in the Western Hemisphere. Anyway, let's continue. Any questions, by the way? Any questions? Sorry, Matthew, are there any questions?
Sorry. We have no questions. Somebody said this is really deep. So that is it. There's no hands raised. One more. Let me just look at one more thing. And we are good to go. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Can you hear me?
Sorry, yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, thank you, Taltat. Okay, let's continue. So, what's it saying now? So it says, yet you don't see it, or many times it says they came down to earth and raised up to heaven from where to where. They can't seem to see while under the spell of faith. 33. Nawapians, the two Zahafu, evil reptilians, that the Ganu, good reptilian species, evolved, they replaced it with astrology. Now, we went through that in Lost Records of Time, isn't it? You understand? The confusion around astrology came in versus, I suppose, arguably the real science, which is astronomy. You understand? And how a lot of those biblical stories are tied into certain astronomical events, where the confusion came in, where I suppose planets, the movement of planets became interpreted as people, even certain configuration of star constellations and maps got interpreted as tribes, like the 12 tribes of Israel. Most people don't understand that it's just tying into the Dendora star map, or the 12 constellations in their so-called zodiac. 34. This was known to the overlords of Draconian Reptilian that one, Ba'h Muzafu, the evil reptilians, was or is evil and wicked spirited by their nature, a warrior species. 35. Very deceptive and manipulative, as you see in Enlil. 36. Who is Baal in their Bible. Yep. 36. While the other Mudganu, good reptilians, the earthly reptoids, were peaceful, good-hearted, as you see in Inki. 37. The Muzafu evil reptilians, draconians, were so devolved that, like the insects of Andromeda and the Arcturians, they were very carnivorous. These Muzafu evil reptilians had a need or have a need to eat meat, flesh, and drink blood. They have a need for solid foods and develop the ability to ingest their nutrients through pure energies of the spirit of their prey, also called Urushamgal. 38, who were of the Irim or Mushahadu, the Watchers. You find recorded in the Book of Enoch, chapter 1, first Enoch, chapter 6, verses 7 through 8. The head of the 200 fallen ones, Shamyaza or Samael or Shemyazaz or Saminza, with many names and titles. 39. The fallen angels mixed with the Adamite women, Genesis 6, verses 1 through 5, verse 40, as recorded in the Holy Book of Daniel, chapter 4, verse 17. The teachers of the evil, first Enoch, chapter 9, verses 5 to 14, first Enoch, chapter 10, verses 12 to 13, verses 18 to 20, and chapter 7, verses 1 to 14. 41. These beings worked with the reptilians in the making of a man called Adam, the pale race. 42. With the DNA of the Mukma'u Pleiadians 6,000 years ago, who also had 46 chromosomes. 43. To become workers, slaves, and food. Lulu Amilu. 44. Yet, Nuapians, let's get back to the reptilians and the reptoids. 45. Pa Muzafu, the evil reptilians, learned to shapeshift from Pa Mukma'u, the Pleiadians, and are now, or up to 2000 AD, on the planet Earth in humans' forms. They are taking over governments one by one. But the now Mukma'u Pleiadians have been exposed to many, yet many still don't or won't accept these facts. 46. Their lust for frightened animals and human flesh, their race they breed, a race they bred just for that. 47. The offspring of the Adamite women and the Nephilim, their hunger was much too great, so they turned on their own to kill and eat. Yeah, so you can read about that in First Enoch. Yeah, so that's why that reference is given. 48. It had to be Dawa, evil energy sources like themselves. 49. So in order to survive, they must ingest pure Jawed, wicked, Dawa, evil spirit energy, 6 etheric blood and flesh, unnatural nature energy. 50. And it is this fact alone that turns simple self-preservation into grafting a group of graves for their evil agenda. 51. Used in abductions, testing, breeding, Muhmanu humanoids. 52. In order to survive here on this planet, they must interbreed with there'll be other races, in every 400-year cycle to 100 years. 53. So they created a group of alien greys as their slave species, cloned as a source of nutrition after breeding with the Adamites in the last 2,000 of the 6,000 years. 54. 2,000 years ago was a seed transported to Earth in a Gibor, Jibrail, and by a male, Joseph, implanted in her by the holy and pure spirit for the reptoid seed to carry on. This seed was called Immanuel. Matthew chapter 1, verses 18 to 23. As it is said, that seed which conceived her is of the pure ghost. Holy means pure in Hebrew. Ghost means spirit in Hebrew. The craft was cited by the Mesopotamian priest Magi, who followed it to where the seed was originally there. To where the seed was originally there, from Egypt, Arabia, Persia. They came to confirm the reptile was born a god in flesh, a flesh-eating El of the Elohim, who called his father and his god Eli my own El, Matthew chapter 27, verse 46, who left him. Now, this is quite interesting. Now, let me just jump on the internet for a second to show you something. Some of you may have seen this before, because it might seem, hey, these guys are talking, what they're saying is nuts. Even according to their very book. So we read about this nature of these creatures needing to have the food a certain way, isn't it? They are ingesting, so they need to have frightened, sound scared animals because it feeds or creates adrenaline, forces adrenaline in the blood. And they've devolved to a point where they can absorb, as I say, this unnatural energy from these creatures. Yeah, so let's just jump to Malachi Chapter 2. Look at Malachi Chapter 2. Let's see. Yeah. So hopefully you can see that screen. Yeah, Malachi Chapter 2. And we're going to go to the last verse. Yeah. Now, this is the Lord speaking. Yes, an extraterrestrial. So the Lord speaking, and he's speaking to the Levitical priest. Yeah, so obviously it's a book of Malachi. Yeah, which means my angel. Yeah, so this individual Malachi or Murdoch, is speaking to these individuals. Yeah, to the Levitical priest. Yeah, and here in the last verse, what does it say? It says, we'll start from verse 16. It says, "For the Lord, the God of Israel, saith, he hateth putting away. For one covereth violence with his garment, saith the Lord of hosts. Therefore take heed to your spirit, that ye deal not treacherously." And this is in verse 17. "Ye have wearied the Lord with your words, yet ye say, wherein have we wearied him?" So it's explained that the Levitical priesthood are speaking to this extraterrestrial, and he's saying to them, "You've wearied me with your words," effectively. And then they're saying to him, where have we wearied you with our words? When ye say, everyone that doeth evil is good in the sight of the Lord, and he delighteth in them, or where is the God of judgment? So this extraterrestrial who they were speaking to is not the one who was for using human beings as food. Yeah, this is against that. Now we see that there's two types of reptilians. There's good and evil, isn't there? Reptilians. So they're being challenged on their behavior, understood? But they're saying, well, hold on a minute. The one that we were dealing with, or one of you who we were dealing with, understood, was saying to us, you need people to do evil acts. Yeah, because that seasons the meat. That makes the food the correct configuration for these beings, understood, to ingest that what? That wicked energy, which is of their own nature. Understood? And so what's being expressed there is, well, okay, boom. Everybody that doeth evil is good in the sight of the Lord. Doesn't that go against the very tenets of the Bible and the Quran? Yeah, and the Torah? And then the interesting thing at the end, well, where's the God of judgment? Because we don't know who you are. We don't know who you are, brethren. We don't know who you are, Lord. Yeah, the one that we were dealing with, he was cool with all of this. Yeah, he's the one who set the system up, understood? Yes, and that's why the Levitical priesthood were, the ones wicked in out of the group, according to their story. They were the ones, as I say, manipulating. When you actually read the stories, they were the ones manipulating bloodlines and different things. Obviously, in the Solomon and Adonijah story, yes, which think about that. the Rastafarian religion is based upon and Haile Selassie is based upon, you understand, the blood descendancy from individuals, you understand, all the way down to David, etc., going all the way back. But Solomon, when you read the story, understood, Solomon got onto the throne by way of manipulation, not because he was chosen. The priesthood manipulated David, understood, to replace, Adonijah, understood, who was the older son, Solomon obviously is the younger one, by way of manipulation. So, and this is one thing that's important for us to understand in anything that we're doing. The Master Teacher explained that the mind is like a field. Whatever you plant in it, it will grow. Let me say that again. It says the mind is like a field. Whatever you plant in it, it will grow. So if the seeds of what you start is manipulation, it's going to be in there, everything else that you're doing. And you see a lot of, we'll get into this maybe a bit later, probably in part 3, but you see about a lot of instances where you've got black leaders, you've got the black leader and then you've got the anti-warner. And then the person goes against the original person who's maybe set everything up for whatever reason, and then becomes the anti-warner. Now, and then all of a sudden there's some new, I use the word enlightenment loosely, where they go off and then start off maybe their own organization and say, look, I've seen the way, and create their own doctrine based off of the original. Understood? And then later down the line to their followers, it looks like, okay, well, they've got a new brand of interpretation, a new doctrine, so on and so forth. But the reality is, when you look at the origin of it and the seeds of it, it came out of disagreement. It didn't come out of, I received this information or some natural form of growth, etc., in a positive way. It always seems to be off of some argument or disagreement. So in the seeds of the formation of that thing is negativity. So along with all the positive stuff that's being done is going to be the seeds of negativity also growing in that original, how the thing was started. Understood? Yeah, so we have to understand that, because as the thing's growing, whatever the negative and the positive is going to grow, which is why the true understanding, when we break down what the Greeks refer to as the Ennead, or those sacred 9, the story of, as the Master Teacher pointed out to us who's paying attention, to us to consider, is remember how could, who they call Set in the story, understand, obviously in tones, Satak, how could he be evil? Because when you follow the configuration from the source, isn't it, from Atum, obviously down to Shuar, Tefnut, understood, and all of the 9, how they were birthed. If the original was agreeable, everybody else born out of them would also be agreeable. Where did the evil or the negativity come in? So the way they've told the story, or even our understanding of the story, is not correct in terms of the symbolism or our understanding of it. There's more to it that is to be expressed. So that's showing you, even in that verse, that there's a hidden agenda, or not an obvious agenda, not obvious to the so-called believers of what is really going on or taking place in that Old Testament. Somebody who knew had to come back, who was there when the word was said, let there be light, so to speak, who was there or understood the context, as they show you in Revelation chapter 3, verse 14, where that Amun was there, who witnessed the creation of the Mukasu God. We were there as the ancient Egyptians, witnessing how everybody came along, isn't it? And the Faru, from a higher perspective, witnessed all things that were taking place in existence. Hence called the Watchers. Anyway, let's switch back to where we were at. Any questions?
One moment, computer's messing about when I'm trying to unmute. Right. Somebody wants to know the name of the scroll, and we think it's.
So we got Freaks and the Perfect Creature, but this, what we're reading now, is from a reading called the Truth About Reptilians or something like that. I think. Sorry, it's not truth. A lesson about reptilians, but it's not in book form that's released at the moment. So you're getting it exclusively here right now. So I'm sure it will be at some point in the future. I'm not trying to be special. Do you understand? It's just not in public form right now. So it's in this way for us to go through and study. Because in Freaks and the Perfect Creature, I think it's around verse 15 or 16, we are asked to go and look at the mind's eye, Partarak. So before we step on and go and understand the rest of the book, the Master teacher explained to us, go and look at the mind's eye. So we're looking at the mind's eye, looking at context, and then we're going to step into another Partarak, to the ghost, to understand what's fully going on. Okay, so where were we at? We were at... okay, so let's start from 50. So it says, and it is for this fact alone that turns simple preservation into grafting a group of greys for their evil agenda. So you're understanding, so they've created a group of beings to manage the food. And those who have read the Holy Tablets understand that the certain, those more Madu or greys, remember, originally worked for the Paramuzaku. They were used to basically be sent in certain environments to analyze those environments for various reasons. It could be wanting to establish a genealogy, etc., in certain environments. So they basically acted as a form of humanoid sensor or tracker. And obviously at a certain point, when they got their freedom, some of them, as I say, became enslaved by certain groups of reptilians. Understood? So here we see that then, again, now they've manipulated a group of greys to facilitate the gathering of this food. So some of these priesthoods, like Levitical priesthood, tying into Leviathan, understood, were there for this purpose, to facilitate this graftation of food. Remember, in Genesis chapter 4, verse 26, that's when prayer came in, excuse me, where they were no longer connecting with the group, they were connecting to one singular being. That being was named what? Tammuz, who you find in Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 14. What does the word Tammuz mean? The word Tammuz means harvest. And I can't remember which lecture, so forgive me for that. But the Master Teacher explained to say, when Christians are talking about being saved, the purpose for saving something is so that you can use it later. So the question is, what are you being saved for? If you put money in the bank, which you call your savings, it's so that you can spend it on a rainy day, some say, or you're saving for a rainy day. So when times get tough, you've got savings there. If you lose your job, you've got savings there to help you out. So the purpose of saving something so that you can use it later. So what are they being saved for? It's a question for them to answer. Now, so it says, 52, in order to survive here on this planet, they must interbreed within every 400-year cycle to 100 years. 53, so they created a group of alien greys as their slave species, cloned as a source for nutrition after breeding with the Adamites in the last 6,000 years. And then it says, we did cover this, didn't we? So let me move on. As I said, I am not of this world. I am from above. John 8:23, and his spiritual father was in Orion. Matthew chapter 6, verse 9. We see the Greek, we see heaven, in the Greek, it is Strong's number 3772. Orion, we see the word Uranos there in the Greek, tying to the Orion star system. This is their Yeshua, Jesus, Isa, Jesus, Jesus, who was born to deliver them up to the Elohim gods, he ate meat, flesh. John 21:5 and Luke 24:41. Understood? So this is their agenda, yeah, which they've tied everybody into the similar or same vibration. But as we see now, actually it's got nothing to do with us. 55. So, Nawapians must who follow the religions of the Adamites and the covenant of flesh eaters. Don't really know what is meant by the living in the blood of Christ by his blood. Symbolic of wine, blood, bread, flesh. Yeah? So bread is what? Yeah, bread is flesh, correct? But bread is also money. Yeah, they refer to money as bread. Yeah. It brings a new meaning to Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, isn't it? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. You understand? Yes? And then give us this day what? I know. Big bread. Now, interesting enough, in fact, let's continue. So, or that they're God or gods. Angels were in fact flesh eaters. Genesis 18, 1-8 came down to kill people in Sodom, but stopped to eat the flesh of a calf with Ibrahim, who was a Mesopotamian named Ubru'um. He made the covenant, Genesis 17, 1-14. with the Almighty God. Hebrews number 7706 to 410. Yeah? El Shadi or El Shaddai. In the Psalm, we know there's a certain rapper by the name of Slim what? Yeah, the Almighty Devil or Demon. As you see, Deuteronomy 32:17. Yeah. Excuse me. Where you see devils in Hebrew, Strong's number 7700. Pursue, inquire, require, search, seek. Sharad, yeah, that's the darash. So Elohim can require human flesh or animal, but they should not require another. This is after Cain killed Abel. 71. So they were made as food to be eaten by their makers, but after mixing their DNA with the Nephilim, their offspring did start to kill each other. First Enoch chapter 7, verses 11 to 14, and Jubilee chapter 5, verses 1 to 3. 72. And they feared being attacked and killed and eaten by their own creation, so they made laws, religious laws, in books from tablet by Tammuz in Ezekiel chapter 8, verses 12 to 14. Inanna Ishtar, daughter of Nanah. 73. So once the Greys were freed, returned to Orion's belt in Zeta, they were used to help teach humanoids. 74. So the revolving of the Greys, which led to their freedom from consumptive bondage of their makers. The Draconian Reptilians, yeah, their makers, the Draconian Reptilians. 75. Once they left their captors for Orion's belt beneath the center sun. 76. But then, bereft of their evil, energized, cloned slave Greys, the Muzafu Reptilians desperately needed a new source, or to return to eating Pa Mukma'u, the Pleiadians. So if that wasn't clear, you know that basically the Pleiadians were originally the food source of the Muzafu. Yeah, so them creating a being in their image and after their likeness was a replacement source of food, understood, for these reptilians. This is what the Mukasu and Mars teacher obviously explaining, is why they keep destroying, places like Iraq and places like that, because the true origin of who and where they came from, yeah, they don't want the world to know, because they've created an idea of themselves through TV, through the media, through cinema, Overstood, yeah, and don't really know actually their origin is that they were created to be food. This is why I think the Master explained on one lecture, if you look at the most different types of documentaries made, yeah, so not the most document, but the most different types of different documentaries made at the time he made the statement, is documentaries made about ancient Egypt and about food. Ancient Egypt and food. So we obviously was paying attention, yeah, ancient Egypt. Now food. Yeah, there's almost an obsession with food, isn't there, on this planet? Yeah, certainly in the West, so much about in Africa and the Caribbean. But certainly over here, there are programs upon programs upon programs about food. Yeah, so certain things, when we step back from ourselves, step back and we look at some of these influences around us, yeah, you can see elements of the setup, yeah, elements of the way in which the society has been constructed, as I say, and works for a certain reason. But that reason, as I say, is not obvious. Yeah, so they need a new source or to return to eating Ba'h B'ah, the Pleiadians, for evil nutrition. 77. So they set out in their mighty but evil fleet of crafts, Psalm 68:17, 20,000 crafts or chariots. Thousands of them came to earth. 78. After seeking other planets that had populations on which they could feed. 79. However, the energies were not evil, so they came up with a plan 8,500 years ago about this planet. 80. The very first attempts to breed failed. Then around 6,000 years ago, Enki himself, Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 2, came down being part reptilian or a reptoid. He, terraforming this planet, set out to make a new creature. Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 to 27. 82. Later, his brother Enlil made sure that evil was in their seed. Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 5. 83. And among them also was cannibalism, as read 2 Kings 6, chapter 6, verses 28 to 29. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 29. Deuteronomy, I think it should say, Deuteronomy, the verse number's missing there. Yeah, Lamb chapter 2, verses 20. I can't remember the name of that chapter for the second there, but yeah, LAM in the Bible there. Yeah, I can't remember the full name of the chapter there. Lamb chapter 2, verse 20. Chapter 4, verse 10. Jeremiah chapter 19, verse 9. And Revelation chapter 19, verses 16 to 18. So you can take a picture, the screen for them verses, just to look those up there. Lamentations, that should be. Lamentations chapter 2, verse 20. Let's get that correct. So 84, there was food and gold on earth, but the reptoids of Enki or the Dingia would always step in and try to guide mankind, not us, mankind. Yeah? People getting caught up with the Enki and Enlil stories. We know who they are. And obviously us transitioning through the various stories. Remember, those Anunnaki or Enki mixed in with us. So that's why when we were in South Africa, so he mixed in with the Sands people, hence why the story's relevant to us. Understood? But it's still not the Natharu. Understood? At certain times, of course, they worked with them, and other times they had their own agenda. Understood? Yes? So people getting caught up on Enki and Enlil, etc., they're still part of that Anunnaki. Yes, some positive and agreeable, but they're not the Natharu. You understand? They're not the Enneads. You understand? They're not the Ogdoads, etc. Understood? They're still part along the way, and as I say, at certain points, have their own agenda, what works for them. You And that may not always be in our best interest. We'll always step in and try to guide mankind, excuse me, the Adamite race of, this is Strong's number 120 to 130, ruddy people. The white meat that both the Mokma'u Pleiadians and the Muzafu Reptilians. Any questions? I think I might jump down.
There is no questions. Hold on, let me just double check. Right. There's no questions. We're okay. Well good.
Okay, I might jump down to from a verse there. Let's just go back. So from there, we should have gone to here, but not the one below. So let's just continue that. So as you see in Deuteronomy 32:17, where you see devils is Hebrew Strong's number 77. We should have gone here. Demon, devil. So as you see in Nuwapians, the same word, Shaddai, mighty demon, and Arabic Quran, El Shaddid, yeah. They can't see these actual facts or who and what they worship in blood. The covenant as a word means eat, meat. Covenant in Genesis chapter 17, verse 2, you see the word covenant. Yeah? In Hebrew Strong's number 1285, cutting, barif, and covenant, barif. Yeah? Yet it is from the root Hebrews Strong number 1262, feed, eat meat. Yeah, bara. Yeah, look these things up because it kind of helps you to see obviously certain things for yourself as well. Bara. Barif, covenant. I think we've explained to you before that the word British, obviously you see the word British there has those same root words, yeah? As in baref, yeah, British, baref, and ish means fire, but it also means man, sound phonetically. So ish in Hebrew means man, yeah? And then you've got ish, they sometimes spell it with English equivalent, I-S with a Y-H. Ish, I-Y-S-H, yeah, and it basically means fire. So when you're saying baref, it ties all back into this thing. Yes, you're saying British, you're saying children of the covenant of fire. You're saying who's that fire? The fire ties into Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. Yeah, the sun of the morning, which ties into Nana. You understand the word Nan, master, and Nar meaning fire. Yeah, master of fire. That's the light or the fire that they worship. Yeah, and ties back into the food that we're speaking of here. Understood? About that, Emmanuel. So it was the covenant of flesh and the way to attract their gods. God was by much blood, as you read in 1 Kings 18:28 and verses 27 to 28. These Israelite Jacobites of Hebrew seed cried out to their Elohim, but they did not come. So Elijah El Yahweh said, do this. Read verse 27. 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 27. And it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, cry aloud, for he is an Elohim. Either he is talking, or he is pursuing, hunting, or he is in a journey traveling, or must be per the adventure. Perhaps he sleepeth, he is God, and must be awaked. Now, Nuwapians, look at the very next verse. Verse 28 tells them to do 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 28, and it says, and they cried aloud and cut themselves after the manner with knives and lancets until the blood gushed out upon them. 56. So you see, to attract their Elohim, they had to cut open their flesh so that their blood gushed out on them. You see this even today, isn't it? With the ritual with the Shiite Muslims, which they do every year, a similar thing. Yeah, look that up. So it's 57. Why is that? Look back at Leviticus chapter 1 to 10, and you see their Elohim loves the smell of offerings, sacrifice of flesh and blood. He smells it. 58. If you look back at 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 24, it is shown to call on Elohim Baal or Yahweh, and that is by killing animals, verse 25. To dress it as you see in Genesis 18, verse 7, as Abraham did for this God, and 2 angels did dress, means prepare it, cut it up, skin it, that is blood, flesh, as in Genesis chapter 8, verse 20 to 21. The Lord smelled a sweet savor. Leviticus chapter 4, verse 16. So blood flesh on altars was the covenant made with these Elohims, who ate flesh, even humanoids, which they made. This is the same seed as Quran, Surah 3, verse 33. Same gods, Elohim. Hebrew is Els, Alihat in Arabic Quran, Allahs. 59. And who is behind this, and why? My beloved, fear not. They preferred white meat, not the dark. Like the pig is the other white meat. They made them in the image of the Mukma'u Pleiadians. So you are not from Natharu, divine one's pure black seed. The dark meat is not what they chose to rape and breed with in Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 4, and the books of Enoch, as well as the book of Jubilees, and Sumerian stone tablets and others they hide from you. 60. It's about their seed, from Adam to Muhammad to Joseph Smith, their last hope, Mormonism, which they rejected and killed their religion, enslaved them mentally by blind faith. So Joseph Smith was the last Caucasian prophet, understood, or the last one sent to them, who introduced Mormonism, obviously, because the world was due, or their time was due to end, isn't it? And they sought an extension, which they got the first one up to the year 1999. And obviously now, even today, they're seeking a further extension, which has been rejected, which is what the last gathering at Bohemian Grove was about. So, so remember, to each tribe or race out there, they have their own prophets. And this is why, as I say, you cannot choose your religion. You cannot choose. We can choose it in terms of multiple choice or choosing it by decision making. When we say you can't choose it, meaning to say that religion doesn't work for you, because the warner is of the person's genetic genes and seed. Understood? So the link to them, how they're connected to their either extraterrestrial ancestry or etheric ancestry, is placed within their genes, those connections. So there's obviously a physical aspect to you. And you had, with your mother, you had a physical umbilical cord, but you have an etheric umbilical cord, which is tapping in, understood, to various etheric centers where information that relates to who we are is being broadcast, understood, and our configuration enables us to connect with those higher frequency broadcasting ranges, but other races will seek to tap in to us to travel up those sort of ether ranges or scales. Understood? Because we vibrate across all of the ether scales, and that's reflected in the color of our skin, because the higher level of vibration, that melanin or manifestation of blackness, obviously, is the combination, isn't it, of all of the colors. Understood? So this is where that comes, where certain people only have a certain level, so can only travel up a certain level. That's why when they gave you the numerology, remember we are factologists, ontologists, and numerologists, when they give you the numerology of certain races when it relates to ninth ether, it's all out of the perfect number, 1,000, isn't it? Yeah, because that's when the hair follicles turn in, where we were hairless with pure energy at that point, understood, which ties back into the letter M, yes, and ties back into mother, which is a class we're going to do a bit later down the line, and also the lotus flower, isn't it, the Pa Sashan, you understand, which is the symbolic of the number 1,000. We look at the number 1,000, see one, and see the 3 zeros, understood, yes, representing or tying back into the 3 or tri-star system of the Mozaki. You understand? That's one of the symbolic breakdowns for that. But the point is, it's all, the races are 999 out of 1,000, isn't it? 666 out of 1,000, and the Caucasoids represent 333 out of 1,000. Understood? So the reason why the Mokasu, even by those numerological understanding or analysis, cannot travel up the scale, because they do not have the configuration. They don't have the energy level to travel up, because they're only 333. Yeah, they can't even travel up to the 666 because they're not of that vibration. They are 2/3 less of the original. Understood? As the Hindu is 1/3 less from the original. Hence, they have fur, yes, as opposed to hair. So they're black in color, but they have the fur as opposed to the hair, which denotes a weakening of the genes, as you see through those processes, isn't it? 9 ether is all energy, do you understand, existing. Understood? But when 9 ether dies, it becomes 6 ether. Understood? So that's partial destruction of original creation. Now, in Wu-Sabat, remember, creation and destruction have different meanings to what we perceive out if we picked up a dictionary. So remember, creation is growth into form or system. Yes, and destruction represents change in form or system. Yes, so 9 becomes 6. When 9 becomes 6 when it dies, 6 becomes ghost when it dies, or free ether. You understand? And so each obviously has their own prophets, teachings, ancestor elders to help them to become the optimum of what they're supposed to be according to nature, or their own natural design, or divine design, or extraterrestrial design. Understood? And so, one is not suitable for the other. It doesn't mean that you can't listen to wisdom or advice or teachings from other cultures, etc. But it wasn't designed for you. This is why Master Secret is there to say, why no help from above? Because you have to understand, that system of, you know what I mean, and the recipe, I'm going to say, you understand, as maybe a bit of a pun, of how to receive power, how to get help. And it starts with what we know. Yeah? So that's tying back in with your 27 ancestors, or your 4 generational ancestors, down to the 4 generations down, the 30, which you're a part of, that 30 make up your 4 generations. That's who you're connected with. That's our true power. And that's who we're supposed to be sending our requests out to, because they're part of our bloodstream. Yeah, and we don't need to sacrifice any blood or animal, because we have the power already in us to connect. Yeah, we're etheric beings. We can connect along the ether network, the ethereal network. We're part of it. We were there when it was originally formed. We don't need to use anything else but to direct our mind power to open up the necessary portals to make the connection and to keep the connection private. You understand? Like what they call the dark. I think it's called the dark. It's the dark net or something like that. Not the dark web, but they have light connections, broadband connections. They describe it, and they have dark ones. Dark ones and private. They're not ones that the masses can connect to. So the military and different people use those type of connections. It's a similar vein for what we're saying to us. You want to create a protected connection that can't be influenced by lower or outside forces, so you can connect with your great-grandmother who's passed or transitioned, because there's still energy. Energy cannot be destroyed, only changed in polarity, isn't it? You understand? So we don't pass away, we pass on. Yeah? And so one of the things that we've been losing in a lot of battles is because we're not putting our emotional energy and our requests in the right places. Yeah, we have accepted, listen to that word again, accepted, others in place of our own ancestors. And this is why we're losing. And so, therefore, we have to reconnect and accept back those who are of our own genetics. understood, and put our requests back to our grandmother and great-grandfather, so on and so forth, and start to make them work for us. And one of the things, in order to, sometimes we're winning because we're being attacked from so many places, seen and unseen, or what they describe as visible adverse forces and invisible adverse forces. The problem is because of this stupid mindset of forgive and forget, understand, turn the other cheek or whatever. When we're putting these requests out, we never targeted a lot of our enemies. We're always targeting those in close proximity, our own. Too often, because of the programming. They've been taught to protect the Mukasu, forgive them for all atrocities, understand, almost in a moment's notice. But our own, we're going to hold that grudge till we dead and die, you understand? Hate for our own. This is programming. Yeah, so one of the things why our lives may not be progressing the way they should be, if they're not progressing, is because sometimes we ain't targeted our enemies. Yeah, when you pull a weed out of the ground, you got to pull it out from the root. If you just cut the top, it's just going to grow back again. Yeah, I'm not advocating violence by this next statement, but you're not interested in the shooter, you're interested in the person who gave the orders. Because if you take out the shooter, they just hire another shooter. You got to get back to the root as ontologists of who is giving the orders. And target, understand, your etheric protection, understand, in the form of our ancestors on those. Yeah, as we step through these little Partarak, there ain't no forgiveness. There's no forgive and forget with Panatharu. There's no forgive and forget. It's not our way of doing things. That's what someone taught us to their own benefit and advantage. Yeah, so not everything in the environment is good for you, even though it may use terms like good, even though it may use terms like divine. Yeah, it's who's saying it. They're saying it for their people. The rituals may be designed best for their people. The food and the environment may be designed best for their people. Now we think our fight is to fight them for inclusion. Make your vibration fit us as well. Yeah, and in a system of fairness, we're all paying towards the society in terms of taxes. It's a solid and valid argument in terms of fairness. Solid and valid argument. Understood? But they're not going to change. And their nature's not going to change. Who they're reporting to, that's who they respect. That is who they want to be accepted by. They're not interested in us. So you're a fool if you're going to rely on their emotions to give us justice and fairness. The reality is we're going to have to do it ourselves, or work our way out of his system to formulate our own one. That's just the way it goes. There's no changing, there's no getting around it. That's just how it is. And as we step through this even more and you see how it's all structured and set up, there's no way for us to win in that system. That is why nature is saying, hey, get rid of it. It's designed for a certain purpose, to optimize the society to feed these Muzaffar. Yeah, to make us food for the gods. Us, but them. And we get caught up in it because we follow them because we didn't know any different until a true alternative was provided by the Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn in the form of Dr Malachi Z York and Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn. Any questions?
I am looking now. At the moment, there are no questions. There is no hands up. But the feedback from the forum, they are loving the information, and yeah, they're just saying round about Moyasa. So yeah, let's keep it moving.
Okay, let's crack on then. Tawkum. So right, so those So it's all about their seed, from Adam to Muhammad to Joseph Smith, their last hope, Mormonism, which they rejected and killed their religion, enslaved them mentally by blind faith. And just very quickly, so it's interesting, isn't it? Because with Mormonism, remember, they said that we were cursed, you understand, with thick lips and black skin, the curse from their God or whatever the case may be. And this is how you know, just what we're saying is how the society is structured. Because in England, for example, the head of the Mormon church is not banned from coming into the country. Understood? They can move freely in and out, but they have a doctrine which they have a racist doctrine, a wrong racist doctrine, which basically, falsely, talks about us being cursed. But Farrakhan is banned from the UK. You understand? Because whatever, the Jews don't like Farrakhan, so they've banned him from coming into the UK. And that ban's been in place since the 80s. So a country's first responsibility, isn't it, is to protect its citizens. So if it's truly a fair system, you understand? Now, one could argue that, well, if Muslims and Jews are not getting along with each other, isn't that part of their religion? So the religion, you understand? If you get back to the root of it and go back to Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, isn't God the problem? Because he's the one who put hatred between the different parties, which created all the isms and schisms. And according to the Quran, Muslims and Jews don't get along. So they're only matching up to their religion. Obviously, if they don't exercise violence against each other, then aren't they just following their religion? Jews don't like Muslims according to their religion. And they got a name for everybody else who's not Jew, called Goyim. But they don't get blocked from moving in and out of the country. So how is the country, like a UK, for example, protecting its citizens if it's allowing Mormons to move in and out of the country? When they're saying blacks, 4% of the population, are cursed. So they pick and choose where justice works within a society. Yeah? But they say they're there to protect everybody. They never went to Farrakhan or, you understand, Dr. Malachi Z York or whatever to come, because what? The potential that it might stir up something in you to go against the system. That's what they fear. I mean, they particularly care whether about the Jews. They fear that somebody might come along and inspire, trigger something in you to go and find out who and what you really are. Understood? So that ban, even in the UK, is still in place even today. I'm saying, although the American system, they protect, which we'll come on to a bit later on, they protect people who say stay in America. And they attack those who teach to go back to Africa. Yeah, and we're finding out why now, because we're an energy source or force to feed them. Let's continue. So, it says, enslaved from them mentally by blind faith. 61, those Kama'u Pleiadians who protect their own, who were being used as food by the Zahafu reptiles of Draco, dragon, or Dracula. 62, the reptoids tried to help and guide them, but they rejected the Ganu over and over for the Zahafu, reptiles, Draco, or Dragan, or Dracula. 63, the reptoids tried to help and guide them, but same thing, you understand? Over and over for the Zahafu reptiles. Evil, Zahafu, Muzafu reptiles, reptilians, good, B, the Ganu, Ganu, reptoid, and reptoid. So this is what we're seeing there in, we just read about, isn't it, in the last chapter, in Malachi Chapter 2. And this is why you get this confusion, isn't it, between, so God at one point is saying what? Yeah, the meat of the earth is vegetables. Then another place, meat of the earth is meat, flesh, blood. etc. So the ideology aspect of the two brothers, you see that at work, coursing through the book there, and it's nothing to do with us. It's talking about the Celtics, understood, or the Mukasu, as they're known as well today. 64. The Tanana Draconians have or had up to the year 2000 an evil, wicked agenda. 65. In order to survive here on the planet, they had to create what you know as one group of alien greys as their slave species, cloned as a source of nutrition. 66. As the Tanan Draconian Empire continued to grow and expand from planet to planet, they had problems, many in number, which caused the small greys weary of being drained. 67. So the Mudganu reptoids came and freed them from the Reptilians, freed them from the Reptilians, from their captor. The reptile cloned them to use their negative energies, as this was what they must eat as their offspring these past 6,000 years. Must eat flesh with each meal 3 times a day, the seed of Adam. Do as their overlords, kill to eat, raise animals to eat. And this is something, as I say, as we're becoming, or some of us amongst us are becoming more like the Mukasu. Yeah, this is why we're getting cancer now and various different diseases that were maybe less thought of amongst our people, 30 to 40 years ago. You understand how, as I say, the 4-generational shift from 1970 means that even some of us now, understand, those born after 1970 now have those incisors. As we said, I think previously, you roll your tongue across the front row of your teeth, you can see those incisors sticking out or protruding out. Now it's become this kind of fashion thing to go in certain high-class restaurants now, and people are eating, steak, rare and medium rare steak, you understand, to be more like the Mukasu, you understand, spending thousands of pounds or whatever, eating in certain places, eating the steak, you understand, as they eat, thinking it's some kind of elevation or status thing, you understand? Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, a status thing, because they want to be like the vampires. Yeah, because in the vampire story, isn't it? The vampire gives the ghoul eternal life, to be like the vampires. Yeah, which we touch upon in one of these parts of that we're going to read a bit later or next week. Yeah, they want to be like the vampires, but the vampires have to feed off of what? Yeah, they have to feed off of human beings, understand? The ghouls themselves even, in order to survive, to maintain their liberty. Yeah, the word vampire is what? The Empire. Yeah, Vulcan Empire. The Empire is what the word vampire really stands for. Yeah, all tying back into what we're speaking about here right now. Understand? In fact, when you really think about it, there's in fact, we'll leave that for now. Now, 68. Let's continue. Do as overlords, kill to eat, raise animals to eat. 68. As you read in Genesis chapter 4, verse 2 to 4, their Yahweh of Elohim taught them to raise animals for offering for them to eat. 69. But Mudganu reptoid Inki told them, don't eat flesh. Genesis 3:17. Eat of the ground all of your life. Genesis 1, verses 29 to 30. Both Adamites and creatures should not eat flesh, only herbs. This is what one of the brothers Inki said. But after the flood, his brother Enlil said, you may kill and eat flesh. After what Inki had said, Genesis 9:3, Enlil says, eat meat. 70. Genesis 9:4. Yet they feared these Adamites, now mixed with Nephilim, will eat and kill them. So you read Genesis 9, chapter 9, verses 4 to 7. You don't kill each other, but only I will require. Hebrew Strong's number 1875. Eat. So this is what we read, previously, which we read out of order. So let's jump into the next one. So it's 84. So there was food and gold on earth, but the reptoids, Inki, or the Dingia would always try to step in and guide mankind, the Adamite race of Strong's 120 to 131. Ruddy people, the white meat that both the Mukma'u Pleiadians and the Muzafu reptilians love to abduct and eat. People today say he or she has gone missing, just up and gone, never to be seen again. When in the cinema, the fourth kind, that should be four with a U, yeah, fourth kind, it is laid out for them and even speak Sumerian to let all know who they are and that are taken. Mukasu Caucasoids. 85. The Mudganu, reptoids were benevolent and good-spirited. 86. They are highly advanced yet peaceful reptilian humanoids who also shapeshift, can look black or pale. 87. All took part, agreed not to mix with the seed of Parnatharu, the divine ones, and the Nagaru Salau, Negroid race. 88. This was much later violated by the Kasu Caucasoids, and now you have mixed Caucasoid Negroids called neutrinoids. Yet they belong only to the Nagaru Salau Negroid race, whether they accept that DNA as a fact or not. That DNA fact or not. 89. Remember, in order for the Nephilim to mix with the Adamite women, Genesis 6, chapter 6, 1-5, they must have had the same amount of chromosomes, 46. The reptilians did not have the same, but the Mukma'u Pleiadians did have 46 chromosomes, but also called leprosy in the earth and all other diseases. 90. However, far more important to the Draconians were the indigenous Patahites of the planet, because of this thing called Ba'ah, soul, which they do not have. 91. Yet they can only get soul if, listen carefully, the Nagaru Negroids will offer it to them of their own free will. Remember we were talking about earlier about offer and acceptance in terms of the contract, legally. Offer, and it has to be an offer and acceptance. This is why the word accept is very important. Yeah, and the word trust becomes very important. Yeah, because if you don't know what you see, what happens is, in a lot of instances, isn't it? Which, let's be honest, in a lot of, certainly in the UK and Americas and different places or whatever, they promote miscegenation. So very, very much in the UK. Yeah, the face that fits. They promote miscegenation by the back door. Yeah, so by attacking our character continually, yeah, it makes you feel like you want them, isn't it? And this has worked when we were young children. You understand, where you want to be like them. Understand? You know, the Head and Shoulders advert, so powerful, it will make you think that you want dandruff. Why haven't I got dandruff? You understand? Why haven't I got dandruff? Because the Head and Shoulders advert makes it look like dandruff is cool. You understand? Not that it's a form of leprosy. So television is very powerful, and by attacking, understood, certainly black women and black men, to make them feel undesirable. When somebody then comes along, it sets you up, isn't it? So when somebody then comes along and is interested, you now feel wanted. From previously, the society makes you feel unwanted. Yeah, so it's setting you up here to be food for that Mukasu or Femi 6 female that's been sent out, understood, to now that they sent out to mix with. It's setting you up as a Nagaru female for the Mukasu male that they sent out to make you mix with, because they continually programmed you to be an unwanted, make you feel like you're not valued, when the real value is in the genes. The real value is the soul. The real value is in the melanin. The real value is in the configuration of the damar in the brain, a certain fluid that's in there, which they feed off of. It's deeper even than you think. Yeah. Somebody in the chat, if people are knowledgeable, what is the Sabaic word for accept? Anybody can respond. What is a Sabaic word for accept? If anybody, I'll leave it there to wait until that's answered. But what's the Sabaic word for accept? If people know the word for that, and we'll talk a little bit about on that. Any questions?
No questions at the moment. I'm hoping somebody will try and answer that question that you just posed.
Just check. So I'm just checking the written ones. Okay, Judith, yeah, we've caught you there. Apologies, we didn't answer those earlier, but I think we've answered those now. And the scroll question as well. Yeah. As I say, that I think that the reason why that lesson of reptilians is not out yet because it's got a few errors and things that need to be corrected. But I'm sure at some point in the future that will be released. But you're getting it now. It's too important for us to. It's important for everybody's understanding of what's really going on. Now, if you can get the word accept in the chat, then we'll give a breakdown on that. This is a point we want to make. Now, Sabaic word for accept. Now, so let's continue. So benevolent, Mugdanu. So the soul, interested in our soul. 91. Yeah, so they can only get to the soul if the Nagaru is in their Dracula myth, isn't it? You have to invite the vampire, yes, to come into your home. Okay? You can't just come in on his own. You won't break in. You understand? You've got to invite him or her in. So we'll offer it to them of their own free will. 92. That is why religions over were watered down to meet what each race thinks will help them in the life and after. 93. So to willingly accept that Abrahamism religions is to welcome the reptilians to your soul. Once in, you seem to become blind to all facts and truth in what is belief and faith. The unseen force you give whichever name. 94. So you offer your soul just as they show in the cinemas of Dracula. A person has to welcome Dracula into their home or lives. The same is done in the religions of Abraham. Yeah, and so we see the initiations in it. Mitzvah, Mosesism, baptism, Jesusism, Shahadat, Mosesism. You offer your very soul to them, which they can't claim until you're dead and out of the flesh, so you can regain it before then. So we've shown you basically, remember that the Egyptian term Rei Ha-Achet. Remember, in Feeding the Forces, it explained to you that Rei Ha-Achet is a program to align, as I say, or to ensure, I should say, that basically, whilst we're here in the physical, that our energy is being directed to our own ancestors. Understood? And what happens, to fool an individual, understand, is to us to be tricked at the point of death, because when that soul breaks into different cars, it will gravitate, understood, to the energy centers of its last vibration. Do you understand? Obviously, it should be at 7, 8, and 9 ether, because that will always be of our own ancestors. But 6 ether and below are not of our own ancestry. Understand? So those elements there could be based on last vibration. They could gravitate then towards these lower etheric forces because of fear. Understand? Yeah, which they have us fearing. You understand? Fear of hell, these different types of things. Because of fear, that lowers the vibrational energy of those composite parts of the soul, and they end up in these lower etheric ranges and then act as batteries for these lower forces. So basically that program, Rei Ha-Achet, is designed to realign, understand, remove that ancestral energy from those lower forces and put it back to where it's supposed to be. And that's part of the plan of raising what they refer to as these golden children, for that to be taught and trained how to do that purpose, because they're able to vibrate as we all are. Well, they're just golden children, but they have a very specific purpose where they're able to vibrate up and then can complete this realignment. So none of our energy is being there for these lower forces to use, because this is a game that gets played, which has been explained here, how religion is being used, say, to formulate this battery for these higher entities to feed off of, which you saw in that movie Matrix. You understand? Yeah, you saw in that movie Matrix where human beings were the battery, isn't it, of the system. So, and if you replace the digital side with the esoteric or the spiritual side, you see the game that gets played in that particular movie. Now, somebody there. Okay, so Kabul. So, thank you, Anarchist. Yeah, so Kabul in means to accept in Sabaic, correct? Now, interestingly, yeah. So, but there's a place in is it Afghanistan? They're called Kabul. Same sound, yeah. What does the word Kabul mean? It means capital. Capital, correct? Yeah, Kabul, look it up. Yeah, looks capital. Now, what is the capital? So, capital in the UK, for example, yeah, in England can be London, America, certain places, you understand? It could be Washington, DC. I mean, certain states, it's different one. New York, you understand? In certain states or whatever. It can be different cities, which are considered to be the capital. But capital now, yeah, capital is also a word used for what? For money, correct? So it's a word used for money. And so when we think of a capital, yeah, and think about London, what do we have? The center of some of these capitals, or the financial capitals, they sell stocks and shares, do they not? Stock. So we have stocks, which are pseudo shares or ownership in a company, non-tangible. And then you have something called livestock, same word being used. You understand? Now, what we're going to do is going to just show you in etymology the words that link to this word capital. Yeah, just so you can see with your own eyes as opposed to just saying it and you believe it. Now, so, you can see on the screen, we're Etimo Online, obviously it's on the screen, yeah? So, what did we say? Kabul, in Sabaic, means accept. We're talking about acceptance. Acceptance can only be done from the mind, correct? It can be done from the mind. Now, you see here the English word, you see capitals, we know, are one of the meanings, yeah? It also can mean a head, a column, here, capital, Old French, modern, directing, head of a column, yeah, literally, little head from kaput, head. It's what it ties into, the word kaput. There's also a word I think they use for explosions, isn't it? Like kaput, and or like a something ending, understood? But you see, capital ties into the word head. Now, it's related words here, yeah? Capital, capitalism here. But what does it say here? See also what? Cattle and fee. So when we click on the word cattle, cattle is also known as what? Stock. But it also, in etymology, the true meaning of it, it means property, money, land, etc. Understood? Yeah? But it ties back into head. Now, so when we're thinking about here, we're seeing the acceptance, yeah? So we're giving over our mind, our soul, our thinking. So when it says to us we're losing our soul, let's just make it nice and clear. So when a person loses their soul, and the reason why they can regain it back and lose it, is when you are not or us as Nagara are not thinking for ourselves. Yeah, so a person can lose their soul if they're addicted to heroin, for example. And the reason why they lose their soul is because the person is not in control of their decision making. They've become an addict and therefore are sick, and therefore, yes, they're addicted to the pursuit of heroin. So heroin is driving their decision making as an addict, not themselves. So this is how a person loses their soul, because the soul is connected to the mind, to the mental, etc. And it's that free flow of us making our own decisions. So when we're in the religious vibration of somebody else and we accept that religion, what we are saying is we are forgetting about who our origins, who our ancestors are, and we are going to now imitate another race. That's what we're saying. We're going to imitate another race when we follow that, or we are initiated, baptized, mitzvah, a shahada. You understand? Yes? We are saying we are going to live in the image and after the likeness of somebody other than self and kind. So that's how we lose our soul, because we're not in control of our decision making again. Now, what we see here is say accept. Now, Kabul means capital, understood? So capital can mean capitals in capital letter, you understand? But it also can mean money, property, where the value is. That's why the capital is the head capital, where people in those cities gather together, isn't it? Yeah, of all different races, all different kinds. Boom. That's where the most kind of chaos is, isn't it? The nod, open us up. Understood? The capital is the place of the heaviest influence, usually in a country. Understood? Yes? And ties in, as we see here, to cattle, understand? Stock, and then the head. Now, we're going to read about what these individuals, these reptilians, and also their servant greys, what part of the body are they interested in the most? Eating of brains. And a fluid, understood, connected to the brain that allows these greys to feel some kind of emotions. They don't have emotion. They get drunk off of this fluid in human beings. They show you in what's that movie? The movie with the Wachowski brothers, who now become the Wachowski sisters. What's it called now? I forgot the name. Somebody might be able to put it in the chat. I've forgotten the name. But you know, it's the lady who was a cleaner. She gets reincarnated, if people remember the movie, and then she finds out that she's an incarnation, but she's really royal, and they take her back to her own planet or whatever, and they find out that human beings basically are food for these entities. They're a famous movie. I can't remember the title. That's called. I always forget it. This movie. So if somebody can look it up and just place it in the chat. It's a Wachowski brothers movie. Something. It's after the name of a planet, but I can't. Jupiter Rising. There you go. Thank you. Brain for getting that back again. Jupiter Rising. Yeah, go and look at that movie there. I'm not particularly explaining it well, but it shows a certain liquid that was basically derived from human beings, which these entities, they basically sell on the intergalactical market or whatever, and basically they sell body parts. They use human beings for body parts, and they even use the terms like harvest, etc. So when the population reaches beyond a certain level where human beings are overpopulated, so basically it's affecting the natural environment of that planet, they see it as ripe for harvest. Understood? So in that movie it goes into to that concept. Understood? But what we're showing you here is that these words like accept and trust have significant meaning and value for us. We have to take back control of them. You understand? Because if you think about it, we have, let's say, offered ourselves to them and given them blind trust. Yet when somebody like the master teacher comes along, how hard, say they make a statement, how divine does a man have to be before you accept his divinity? Because continually, the ones sent to us are continually having to prove themselves to us. They continually have to work to achieve our acceptance. And if something they say doesn't align with our arguably personal belief, then that acceptance can be done, or that trust is gone. Whereas the Mukasu continues to inflict damage upon us, and we still place the same trust in the system. It doesn't work for us. So, as it says, you offer, so the words are quite interesting, and one of the reasons why it's important to learn the language, not so that we can do what we've just done in terms of comparing it to English, but there's a different understanding or meaning of the doctrine in the language. Yeah, so that's why we have to elevate, and when we're communicating on that level, if you think about that as well, remember, it's the tones of 7, 8, and 9 ether. We cannot be caught by those lower forces because they don't have the apparatus to get there. The only way they can get to there, and I'm sorry to keep quoting movies, but in the movie Matrix, for example, the Agent Smith was able to, he in-housed one of the members or crew members on the ship, yes? And then was able to jump from the digital into the physical world, where he then started to cause mad chaos. Yeah, so the only way they can get up to these higher states of existence, because they don't have the apparatus to do it, is to in-house certain negroids. And if they're willing to play the game, they can have access to these higher realms, which is why there's ultimate cut-offs to stop that from ever happening. Hence why we read about, isn't it, Sirius, the Sirius star constellation, that gateway was blocked. Yeah, they collapsed one of the stars. There used to be a 3-star constellation. You read about that in the Holy Tablets. They collapsed one of the stars to block the gateway to the higher realms. Yeah, when certain of us did not, or certain of our species did not want to elevate when the time was right to elevate in an instance. Yeah, when, as you know the story, our ancient ancestors, they had no longer need for the physical body. Understand? And evolved or grew to a higher state of being in an instant. And those who did not want to elevate obviously stayed because they liked the physical life, so to speak, but they were still connected etherically. So therefore, the behavior of those in the physical was affecting those in those higher realms, and they cut it off, but obviously left an ascension pathway for their children who were willing to live and follow the instructions in their image and after their likeness, for them to become, eventually, Natharu themselves, isn't it? This is our journey to become 720 again. 360 mastery of the physical, 360 mastery of the etheric or the spiritual. And to become complete again. Understood? 720, 7 plus 2 equals 9. You know how it goes. So you're sent an example, or what they call the chosen one, that genetic configuration, for you to have a living example, a living Nathar, or a living example to show you what needs to be done, what needs to be do, ask the questions you need to done, break the spell, unravel, remove the virus. Understood? Yes? But to, as I say, create a scenario or situation where, switching that back, creating a situation where you know how to ascend. But obviously there are certain people who want to not see that particular thing happen because you don't know the value, and say you as in me and you or us, we don't know the value of the soul. We don't know its value, so what beings will be prepared to do to obtain one's soul? Because you don't truly know its value. If you knew its value, you'd understand the context. what somebody would be prepared to do to get one soul. Now, what does it power? Do you understand? Yeah, because you understand the charger of your battery, for example, yeah, in your mobile phone, and when that's charged, yeah, what it powers. Understood? Yeah, powers a phone. If it was used for something else, probably could power lighting, different things or whatever. It's got a certain amount of power. What does one soul and how many beings it is, does it feed, or what power can it give to other life forms who don't have soul? Because when you understand that, then you understand what somebody will be prepared to do in order to get that soul. What they will be prepared to spend in order to get that soul. What they will be prepared to show on a screen, on a TV, on a cinema, in order to trick you to giving that up. If you remove all of their mythology, we're dealing with the reality, obviously, of what's going on here, and how your Warner, your master teacher, is saying it's doing a 1-3-5 stretch. Understood? Because of this information right here. They didn't want this information uncovered. Yeah, the food for the gods doctrine. Let's keep going. So 95. So they set in plan, it's a motion to use their offspring Adamites to utilize the human population on earth as the source for their evil energy nutrition. Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. 96. They first need to eliminate the facts with faith for their religions and or political agenda, and manipulate human races by way of the evil mind's Adamite race Caucasoid, and those who by mixing accept them or think they are accepted by them. That word accept again. Understood? Remember, the new prophets or the new gods today are politicians. Yeah, the new gods today are politicians. So 97. So 6,000 years ago or 4,000 BC, the plan was in place to make a devil race, weak and wicked, to rule and have dominion for only 6,000 years, then return to take them off the planet to be food, called the rapture. John chapter 4, verse 32 to 35. And 4 months is the 4,000 years before 2,000 years ago. Yeah, read John chapter 4 to understand symbolism of that statement. Or from 4,000 BC to 2,000 AD, Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 to 27. 97. However, Nuwapians, they are not obedient to their maker and even ate their own children. 99. Became flesh eaters, luster of all other races, when it was stated before them in the Grand Council, Psalms 82 verses 1 to 8, they could not agree. Psalms 83, 1 to 7. So this new seed of Adamites rebelled over and over in their holy books, Bible and Quran, and others lust hidden from you. Their end has come in 2000 AD. You see many of them fallen is fallen, as you read in the book of Revelation chapter 18 and 19. And many of the Nagaru Negroid Salau race have given their souls over to them by way of religions, and you can't tell them otherwise. Right wisdom or the true past. 100. Now stop and think, Nuwapians. Ask yourself as you look around, who gave the Caucasoid race authority? Who says they can make laws, govern, imprison, kill, war, tax you? Who says they have authority over you in any way at all? Think. You must have accepted that race as your authority. Why do you welcome these Draculates into your lives at all? Break the spell of ignorance now before it is too late. End their story, history, his story. 101. Nuwapians, look around you. They have been telling their religious salvation story for thousands of years. 102. Each time changed a little, but the end results is the same. 103. They keep saying it will come, but it doesn't come. So they make it come in the forms of books, stories, cinemas. 104. They created their lies, and once they see nothing happens each time, they predict and say, well, he, Jesus, or Messiah is coming soon. Be they Mosesites, Jesuites, or Mohammedites, they repeat over and over, soon. 105. But their soon never comes and never will come. 106. So they make come by books. That sounds a bit odd. They make come by books like it left behind, then make those books into cinema to make them feel it happened. Same with other groups of Abrahamites. Yeah, so you see this, remember, because the same coming soon was 2,000 years ago in the story, correct? Yes. And then, as they talk about in Revelation chapter 13, remember, the Paul came along, according to that story, and Paul turned the physical being into a spirit. Yeah, so there was no image. And in Revelation chapter 13, remember, it predicts in that book, they brought the spirit back to life, understood, by giving him an image again through movies. Yeah, Jesus Christ Superstar and all these different types, Passion of Christ. Right, so they resurrected the spirit and brought it back to life in the form of movies, understood, to keep the story going. Do you understand? Because if somebody tells you they're coming back soon, generally speaking, it's not 2,000 years. You understand? If somebody says they're coming back soon, usually, of course, it would make sense. It's got to be in your lifetime. Now, soon means, yeah, you're going to think, hey, if I said to you, I'm going back, I'll be back soon. You're going to expect that to be in a few minutes. You're not expecting soon to mean 2,000 years. Understood? So that soon keeps being extended by the story being retold in different ways and forms. So they say come back by books left behind, then make those books into cinema to make them feel it happened. Yeah? Same with other groups of Abrahamites. 107. The truth is they live a lie, a fiction, legends made up by them, only hopes, called faith, beliefs, and they live and die and suffer as all others. Each time there's a good result, they say, thank you, God. But if it's bad, they say nothing. A child dies in a car crash or plane, families die in wars. Who do they thank then? But if things go well, they thank an unseen, unheard source, unseen, unfelt, unheard source. Time to wake up from their lies they created so that other races worship and fear them. 108, it's time to take back your lives. 109, it's time to take back your souls. 110, it's time to take back your authority. 111, it's time to take back your freedom. 112, it's time to take back your children. 113, it's time to take back your future. 114, it is time to remember your great past. 115, it is time to clean yourself inside out and outside in of all his authorities in all ways in your lives. 116, give him back his image. 117, give him back his likeness. 118, give him back his languages. 119, give him back his religions. 120, give him back his evil, wicked way of living. 121, their time of dominion is up as of 2000, or Adam's dominion. Adam's dominion. 122, it is over them. They watch as they fade out world over. First, lost respect, then loss of fear, then loss of trust. They plot and plan. They plot and plan. Failed. 123. Wapians, you have the actual facts. Now take them to the world. 124. Wake up, people. Break the spell. 125. Now or never. I came, I taught, I will depart. You have the medicine to cure the sick world of their disease. Fact versus fiction. Truth versus lies. Ontology versus theology. Astronomy versus astrology. Fate replaces fate. Understood. Okay, so any questions? Very powerful ending there.
Very, very powerful indeed, Nabakatni, yes. I have no questions. Somebody did put in the chat, what was the name of the last warner?
So for the Caucasians, it was Joseph Smith, yeah, so founder of the Mormon Church.
And there is a hand up. And
yeah, go for it.
Right, I've lost it now. It's Celtic. Celtic, if you can hear us, I'm going to allow you to talk, so you can unmute now. Celtic, you are now free to speak. I don't think he's there. I think we'll have to move on.
Okay, no problem. Okay, no problem. So the point of that, maybe just raise a hand by accident, but the point of that, greetings, Selket. So the point of that is, and going through that in some detail, excuse me. So as we start, which we will do in the next week's part, so we're here next Sunday again, just for Max, who's a week later than our usual time, is now to then drill down. You understand? So you can see, obviously you understand the wider purpose and how certain things are set up in a certain way to optimize, let's say, and exploit the environment for food for these obviously extraterrestrial overlords. How, as I say, it was watered down into these religions, and how we offered up, through offer and acceptance, we contracted our soul and therefore diverted its energy away in an unnatural state to forces that are working against us. Until, let's say, a being came along and tried to sought to uncover, not tried, but did sought by way of the books that have been written by way of the pen, the beautiful words understood, sought to unravel the ugliness that had been done to us. And why it's important to master what the master teacher is teaching. You understand? There's a lot of other teachers out there. People might think they run their head doing certain things, but the difference between somebody who's calling themselves a Musbatu is they're saying basically that they are a follower of Wu-Sabat. So what we're doing is that we've changed our source of reference from what was the Mukasu into our own stuff, and then see what can be validated against what we teach. Yeah, not what the Mukasu teaches. There's no rhyme or reason why we should be trusting in their stuff. If we think about it logically, think it through. Why? Why is our trust in their stuff? So one of the first decisions, not through faith and belief, but through the evidence that's been presented to us. So the warner has said, this is my job, I'm the warner. So the question would be, has he warned? The question would be, if I'm saying I'm a master teacher, the question is, what has he taught? Because the person's giving you the title to tell you what they're doing in advance. Who told us that for the Bible or the Quran? Who was the announcer? Because all of the people who they claim to be speaking in the book are dead. So who's speaking for them? Okay, well, the authors of the books are speaking for them. In their mind, well, who are they? Because we never got to question them. We never got to interrogate them. Many of the things that you do in this society, but yes, we understand we were all born into it, but we never asked the 6 W's, who, what, where, why, when, and how. We didn't ask those questions of this society, but they gained our trust and still have our trust. Let's be honest, they still have our trust. You go to a supermarket and you pick up something, you understand? You pick up a chicken, you trust it's chicken. You don't go home in your laboratory and say, let me do these tests to see if this is really chicken. Yeah, if we're really going to live our life and say, yeah, we're sound right, beings of sound right reasoning, yeah, we don't have no belief and faith, well, it applies to every aspect of a person's life, isn't it? So unless you personally have raised whatever it is, a chicken, unless you are the one planting the seed in the ground, you're not going to know exactly what it is. And you only know it by the names that they gave you to name it. You don't even know what it really is. That's how deep this thing gets. So why would you not want to grab on to a warner of self and kind? Why must I? So Caucasians can have Caucasian teachers, and that's cool. Asians can have Asian teachers, and that's cool. But if I or you as black men and black women, or black women and black men, have a black teacher, it's a problem. Have a black role model, it's a problem. But we can't get out of this mess following other races. The system in nature doesn't work like that. Yeah, and next week when we deal with this class, we're going to show you the mindset of the Natharu. The mindset of the Natharu is not turn the other cheek. Which is why one of the things that it tells you in Master Secret number 1, it says we're not in this situation for what we have done, but rather for what we have failed to do. Yeah, because we're spiritually weak. Yeah, and that doesn't mean we're not meditating enough or praying enough. What it means is directing our energy into the right places to be much more effective. We have not been calling on, one of the greatest gifts that we've been given is the Master Teacher reconnecting us with our ancestors. And I don't mean, you understand, which I see in some of the Pan-Africanist thing, boom, boom, banging drums or whatever and throwing water and calling out names of our ancestors. That's all cool, that's good, mental gymnastics for positive thinking. I'm talking about you connecting and calling upon your great-great-grandmother because you are connected to her. That is real. No one can take that away from you. The fact that you're here, reasoning tells you, as a result, you must have had a mother and father. So therefore, that person had a mother and father. So that connection and that spiritual power, because their role, having lived in the physical, now in the etheric, they have a different role. Their role is to help serve us, understand? Because our energy is supposed to be feeding them, and they're supposed to be helping us to navigate through the physical realm, in readiness for our ascension when we join them. So we make the connection before we transition so that our energy is guaranteed to go to the right place. And we have guidance there that we've already connected to while we're living, because we are etheric and physical, they are only etheric. So are limited to how they can interact with the physical world. Hence why you have to have conduits. But that conduit is not going to some soothsayer somewhere to connect. You're the conduit. You have everything you need to connect. You got to put them to work. And the only way you're going to know it's true is if you put the question, isn't it, to them? You called on Jesus and Muhammad based on trust, without proving. Now when we say connect with your great-grandmother, so on and so forth, now you're hesitant. You've got hesitation now. Who put the hesitation there? That makes sense, doesn't it? Who put the hesitation there? Yes, through the same television, the media. Oh, cut a chicken, this, that. We don't need to cut a chicken. That's lower force entities that require that bloodletting, as they gave us in their Bible, which we just read about today. That's lower entities. Yeah, you don't sacrifice anything to go out and breathe. Air, shuar. Yeah, you don't go out to breathe air. It's given to you freely. You don't go out, have to sacrifice anything to go and receive the energy from the sun. It's given to you freely. Yeah, Mozaku, providers. It's given to us freely. Yeah, it's not. You don't have to be some special being to connect. In the back of every book, is that of the New Scrolls, it gives you a diagram and a pattern and some words to connect with Yaanuwn directly. Everybody can do it. Everybody has a mother, a father, even if they didn't know them, a grandmother, a grandfather to connect with. They are compelled to respond to your requests. Yeah? All you were given the ritual to help connect. Yeah? Because we haven't mastered, we're so far away from what we originally were, we haven't mastered certain connections. We haven't activated certain glands, for example, which are in alignment, which can help our etheric ancestors to come through and talk to us. Because I say, we are here and there, they're there. So we have to make the connection between them. Understood? Which they try to guide us, but let's be honest, our mind is not looking for the solution for them. Oftentimes, it's looking for the solution elsewhere in other places. And even then, if they were to connect in certain ways, in accordance with the rules of the environment where they are at, spiritual rules to keep it simple, yes, yeah, our fear would close the gateway because we don't understand what's going on, potentially. So our fear of a situation, if we saw something appear or etc., our fear could, you understand? And you know how we are, yeah, if a spider, big enough spider, walk in the room, you understand? Some people are wired a certain way where they might control their emotions. Others be like, hey, I'm going to lash that thing, you know what I mean? Lash the broom out of it because of fear, yeah? Lack of control. Understood? So this is what we have to now put into practice. And as I say, directed not only to the things that you want to achieve personally, but to remove some of the barriers that's making life difficult, understood, and challenging. And realistically, we understand now why we needed our own Tamaray or environment. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because really to develop spiritually is very difficult, you understand? When you got 9 to 5 and different responsibilities, and people are not living in and around each other. But even then, people living in and around each other, when people are there trying to be agreeable, guess who's also going to be there? The disagreeable. Mash things up, you understand? Destroy the unity, so on and so forth, yeah, to keep us here on these lower levels. In a divide and conquer, we finish on this point. In divide and conquer, one of the reasons why as well, the Madrishu Tashrak tried to ensure that you're staying up on the latest doctrine and information. Imagine this, in divide and conquer, it explains that the reason why certain people getting housed by walk-ins and want to keep people in older schools, yes, is because the forces of six ether are stronger in those monotheistic teachings. Yeah, their grip on us is stronger. When we move and elevate now to the new cycle information, their grip is weakened because not of six ether forces. That was the antidote necessary, wasn't it, to cure us from the spell that we were under. Understand? So as the doctrines evolve, less and less has that been necessary to even speak about. It's only used, as I say, we use it for comparative studies. Let me show you in this to help you to get a better understanding of this, comparative studies. Understood? That's why we use it. Show you the wrongs so you understand what the right is. You understand? Yeah, so that's how we use it in that regard. So you can see, I suppose, how the game is played, who the evil ones are, and the forces that are holding us back, and target your resources, accordingly. Yeah, so maybe what we'll do, next class, we'll cover this, what we're going to finish off. But I know, because we always asking questions, how do I connect? So there's a presentation we've got, and so we'll add that to it. We'll just walk you through the process, and as I say, it's up to people just to test it out and see how it gets. There should be no Sabian who should not have an altar in their home to their ancestors. You are limping in the Olympics. Yeah, that's just a straight up part of it. Do you understand? But you unless you put it to the test, you won't know if it's real. You understand? I could give you countless examples, but I'm not trying to be Paul on the road to Damascus. To, hey, I've received this vision. That's not fair. You understand? Yeah, it's not fair to us to do that. Obviously, if people know about it and have shared the same experiences, then that's one of the things. But remember, even in our own culture, there's a thing called religiosity, which you also have to be mindful of, which is trying to convince people that wrong is right. And if enough people accept that wrong information is right information, that, you understand, makes it right. Understood? Yeah, it's called religiosity, convincing that wrong is right. And the more masses adopt it, it becomes a thing, which is what we see in monotheistic religion. You understand? So it's important that everybody puts whatever to the test. You understand? You don't have to have a conduit to connect you. If you've been given, a master teacher, and as best as possible, you connect directly. You understand? So obviously, various different student teachers are there to just help the process, to facilitate. But once you read it and put it yourself, it's not to be hidden from you. And the last point of that particular lesson was to take it to the world. You understand? Take it to the world. And you understand in the science of things, a thing and all things are exactly the same. You understand? So we all have the same abilities. We don't have a leadership model in the traditional sense. I'm going to even cover that next week to show you why that's a game. That's another game that's even played that they like to play with us. We work from the center outwards. Yeah, work from the center outwards. And everybody is a leader. Everybody is responsible. Yeah, that their concept of that Messiah is not what is to us. We explained it on this thing in the story of Aset, or Isis, or Arashta, and Isis they call it, and Horus, and that story in there. It's got to do with tones and the secret word. Okay, any final questions before we close out for today? So we're next Sunday, don't not forget, next Sunday is when we're continuing this just from our normal schedule. Any other questions before we close?
Right. You did kind of go over this, and you said it's in the presentation. It was, can I call on my dad who was passed instead of my grandmother? And you can't, and they want, well, I think the answer you gave, I think they wanted a more in-depth answer. That was from Jean.
Okay, just very quickly, I mean, it doesn't matter who you connect with in that 30. I mean, you're just establishing a relationship with the individual. It's like as I say, it's something that you're calling upon that compels to do. So we will go through it in more detail next week. So if you set up, and I can't remember the brother's name, but I'll give him his proper credit. But he put together basically all of the updates where the master teacher has spoken about this, these types of connections. Understood? So we'll put it together, show you the different rules, how you set up your altar, understand the 30, and how you use the pictures, and then, as I say, we. So I think we've sent it out to some people, but we'll go through it in detail, so at least you know what to do. And then it's up to you just to test it and see if it works for you in your life, and then you know, then you know. In that regard, you understand? And some things we need to touch on the set about targeting, some negative elements. But you have to be careful again as well, because if it's against each other, we're all the same, isn't it? So you have to. So the rules work differently from race to race than they do from within our own race. Understood? So again, someone stepped on your shoes in the club, and so it's not a case of, hey, I mean, unleashing certain forces, understood, but you know how the condemned Mukmatu got down, you understand? So when somebody gets in one of their tombs, you see what happens, Titanic and different things. So black magic is when to us, it's when the forces of nature work for you and you are black. nothing to do with chopping up chickens and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Black magic, when your magic works for you and you are black, and magic is unseen forces, as we see it to us, which to us are seen because we know about them, we've got perception of them, because we understand our doctrine, cause and effect. Okay, right. If there's no other questions, let me just check this written part out.
Might be one more. I'm just going to send a text to find out.
Okay, how to clean from a proper. Okay, so what we'll do, anarchists, I said we'll go through that in some detail so that we can just show people that ritual. I think that's certainly useful for people who are not familiar with it, and I say make the document, whatever, the presentation available, to put that in their own time. How does one detach from the society? How? Extremely difficult, but one of that is basically in the 9 ball, it talks about us working. So if you're in a job, you've got business or whatever, we're working to work our way out. So that's a plan. And then obviously really to free our Warner in this day and time, and obviously establish ourselves in different places around the world with a new Tamaray to be developed. Understood? So that is necessary for us in this day and time to do that. Now, the doctrine helps us to work together, and so we need to read it, make it part of our being, and apply it. And more importantly, when we have conflict amongst each other, is work out a way to resolve that conflict without destroying each other. So, in terms of character, different things, but we'll touch into that because you have to understand about the power of walk-ins, and because we're so open in terms of ability, because we're melanated beings, we are both etheric, we have a lot of spiritual or energy potential, yes, and so where we're not aware, as you already rightly see, you're being taken advantage of forces that do know who and what we are and can utilize us obviously as a vehicle and a vessel. So when we understand now about controlling anger, things of this nature, it helps us to stay in control. In fact, one of the things that all Sabians were told to be was to become part of the lodge, become part of the blue house for the males and the white house for the females. Yeah, because there's certain things even in there which the context of it you understand. So one thing's about controlling emotions, and resolving conflict. Yeah, so our understanding of Masonry in that regard is it's obviously for the men's side teaching us how to work together, on the female side teaching us how to work together, different personalities, different ideologies, etc., how to work together for various different single purposes, and primarily to help the poor and the needy, if it's Masonically speaking. But above that, remember, is that when you get to the higher order, or our highest orders, remember the male and females, they come back together. Excuse me, they come back together. Yeah, so if you see, we look at the Sacred Nine or the Enneads, you look at their dress, or in AO, you see everybody was dressed the same, male, female, dressed the same. And so in the higher orders, the elite degrees, we're all dressed the same. Yeah, and if you think about it, a male, when he gets older, his testosterone levels drop, don't they? Yeah, so it's a male becoming more female or becoming balanced. As a woman, as you get older, your estrogen levels drop. So the woman's becoming more male. They're not turning into a male. We're becoming more balanced beings, aren't we? Yeah, in readiness for the transition where gender's not an issue once you're in the spiritual, or you turn back into energy again. There's no gender discussion. It's only relevant to us in the physical. Understood? So you can see how orders replicate stages in nature of growth, and they're designed to obviously build on physical and help us obviously with the spiritual or the esoteric to become 720 again. Understood? So on that note, we will continue next week. This will be on our YouTube channel hopefully this week. We'll get that done. So further studies, we can go back over what we've discussed today in a bit more detail. Okay, nothing else then. Everybody take care. Let people know about part 2. and we will see you next Sunday, same time. Okay? All right. Wadu, and greetings and peace and love to everybody. Take care.